I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We're waiting for one more board member. I'm told she's on her way. The purpose of this meeting, the budget, and also report outs from our subcommittees. At this time, just to review the agenda, if there are any additions, I do have one to propose. To add to closing incidental information, I did receive an email back from the board chair of Payne Mountain School Board. So I'd like us to discuss scheduling a meeting. And at that time, I'll read it into the public record, that email. Okay. I suppose we did. Any other edits, changes to the agenda? Good. Okay. Could someone? So I move that that's added to the agenda. Could someone second me there? Thank you. Seconded by Sarah. Is the first one I heard. All those in favor, audibly, visibly. Aye. Aye. Opposed. Abstentions. Okay. Great. That's added.
Now, I did the policy decision, but I don't see it on here, so it's good, because maybe it was in second read revised and policy. I would like us to delay that, the final approval of that.
Yes.
To the next meeting.
Absolutely. We will not take a vote.
Okay.
However, we can mention it as a second read, but we don't have to take a vote tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, we're going to go ahead with the first public comment section. This is for items not listed on the agenda. The board welcomes comments, but is not able to take any action on them other than to direct the public to the appropriate staff member or to the complaint procedure. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Time may not be ceded to another speaker. Comments are to be addressed to me, the board chair, or the board as a whole, not to any individual on the board, on the staff, or in the public. Please raise your hand and wait to speak until you are asked to. Please identify yourself with your first and last name and your town of residence. Please refrain from restating comments that have already been shared. You are welcome to express your agreement with them. Order and decorum shall be observed by everyone. Shouting and profanity are prohibited, and as the board chair, I will maintain the order and decorum of the meeting. With that, I'll open public comment again for items that are not listed on the agenda at this time. Yes?
My name's Frank Landry. I sent an email to the board. Would this be an appropriate time to bring that up?
Absolutely. You have 3 minutes. You have the floor.
Okay, so this is to address the board directly. I'm sure you all might have read the email, might not have, so I just want to state it within the remaining 3 minutes that I have. I'm not an expert in any of the subjects, and this is strictly talking from the last budget meeting. Just some points to try to parameterize or try to direct the budget going forward if you can. The great thing about being in this country is that you don't have to agree with me, but right now, please hear me. I would say that all student-facing roles within 1 degree of a student should be eligible for cuts whatsoever. Pre-K roles specifically should not. There was mention of closing a building and moving students. I would tend to agree with that as long as the staffing from those buildings was retained. Just to pick up. I would advise a review and cost-benefit analysis of all technology being used throughout your school system. I don't think there would be any savings much more in hardware specifically, but in software, there's a good amount of savings you could potentially have. Specifically, this is my field of work, I would look into the topics of free and open source software that could significantly reduce your cost in technology. Again, I don't mean for this part to be inflammatory. My general thought is that any cost-cutting measures should start in the administration level and then trickle down, not from the other direction. particular mention was in the last meeting that there was a position where they pulled in 4 times their salary based off of solely grant money. I think it would be a great idea if we could start getting teachers to do the same type of grant writing to also help supplement. Just, again, food for thought, don't have to agree with me. And my last point was if busing is a cost that should be considered, why not put feelers out to the community and ask, are there some parents willing to pick up the slack and drop their kids off in the morning and pick them up? Part of my agreement with the school that I worked out, being able to send my 2 daughters to Brookfield, is that we had to commit to dropping them off and picking them up every single day. We could not use the buses, which I'm more than happy to do. And then just some remaining questions if I still have time. I don't know what's caused our budget to get like this, where every single year it seems we're facing above a 5% increase. It just seems like more and more cost is being added, but then more and more cuts are needed to make that happen. Just something I don't understand. What's to say that we're not going to face another double-digit percentage increase in the budget next year? Just a question to pose out to everybody. And my last thing is, what can schools do to also increase the revenue besides just relying on taxpayer money? We've all been in school, most of us are adults, graduated from school. Why is taxpayer money the only thing being used to fund schools?
Mr.
And that's
Landry,
it.
I'm gonna
That's
have
it.
to, perfectly done. I never want to interrupt someone once they're already speaking and break their train of thought, but I will remind you that this public comment section is for items that are not on the agenda, and the budget is on the agenda tonight. But I welcome your comment, and it was heard, and I never want to break someone's flow.
And Hannah, just to be clear, you're planning to open a public comment section at the budget again as well?
Yes, I should have mentioned that. Yes, after the budget discussion, it'll be like last meeting, but I'm glad to see some new faces as well who weren't there. So we'll have our discussion. The board will have a chance to ask clarifying questions. We'll then move to public comment. Again, due to the number of attendees, I'm going to make that a 2-minute limit on your public comment, and I will interrupt you and stop you mid-sentence if that's necessary. Okay, so items not on the agenda. Did I see a hand up online?
Yeah. Username was Kramer, I believe.
Not see it.
Well, we would see a hand up, so,
Oh, I just saw him again.
yeah, it may be not on the agenda, but you'll have a time later. So, yes.
Sure. Yes, Kyle Brown, Brookfield. And just 2 quick related items. I guess the first one is it seems like we have some pretty good momentum with the feasibility study, looking at short, long-term plans for our district buildings, and the budget is hugely important. I just don't want to lose that momentum. I know the school board has a lot of work you're doing, so I just wanted to say that that's also important, also directly related to the budget. And as much as we can, as early as we can, public involvement, I think will still be key for that long-term district facility planning. And sort of related to that, I could have missed it, but I haven't seen much public outreach for our current budget meetings. I know the people who are here are engaged. We know to look online at the agenda packet. We know to look for minutes, but it's very possible I could have missed it. But I think, we're getting closer to town meeting day, and I just haven't seen that level of outreach maybe that I would have expected for sort of what we're talking about. If things like potential closure of a school or eliminating positions are on the table, I guess I just would have expected a little more outreach, whatever that would have or does look like from the board. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, anyone else for this public comment section? All right, I am going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item because we have some very patient guests here. So, Ms. Robinson, you have the floor. Would you like us to stand here? I don't know where you'd like us. Okay, perfect. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and being at RES tonight and for giving us a chance to speak with you all. We decided we'd like to chat with you about our student leadership positions that we have in our school. And I brought in some ringers so that I didn't have to do all the talking. And they're excited to share with you. By the way, I'm Melinda Robinson, if any of you don't know me. I'm one of the principals here at RES. And I'm going to let them take over. You're going to stand right here when you talk.
Nice and loud, my friends.
For 4 years, we have been invited to apply for student leadership positions at RES. Some jobs that we can apply for are kindness committee, PBIS leaders, fish committee, bird feeder leader, kindergarten helpers, art room helpers, flag managers, and morning greeters. Most of the jobs are posted at the beginning of the year, but some are added throughout the year too. Most of the jobs are filled by 3rd through 6th grade, but in the middle of the year, the 2nd graders get to start applying for some of the jobs. These jobs allow us to serve as leaders in the school and to help our whole school community. Everyone seems to really enjoy being a part of these leadership positions. Ms. Robinson announces jobs that are being posted at our lunchtime or coming around to our classrooms. We have to get an application to fill it out. The applications ask how we feel that we should show leadership by serving in this position. She also tells us that what the deadline is for applying for the position. We have friends that have missed being able to get a position because they have missed the deadline. We need to sign our name, have our parents and our teachers sign the application too. We then turn our application into the bulletin board outside the office. If we are hired for a position, Ms. Robinson brings around your hired sheet. We then need to show up for the committee meetings throughout the year. If we decide that we don't want to serve on the committee anymore, we have to go see Ms. Robinson and ask to resign from the position. This doesn't happen very often. Applying for the positions and serving on the communities teaches us a lot for the future. It teaches us to take responsibility by having us fill out the applications, turning it in on time, and showing up for the meetings and work. We all will have to do this in the future when we have jobs. This also teaches us how to be leaders. Many of these roles help us serve as role models for other students. It allows us to help out in the school in jobs that might need to get done. For example, a new position this month helps take care of the lost and found in the building. Our lost and found leader jobs help to make sure that students see the different lost items and claim them. Also, a new job is our cleanup crew on our playground. We have a 5th and 6th graders that are taking the lead on making sure all of the playground equipment is cleared up at the end of the last recess of the day. As a leader in the building, we are showing what the Wizard way really is and learning how to be leaders in the future. All of us are here tonight on the kindness committee. We are an important leadership team in the school. We help raise the spirits of our students and all of our staff. This year we have delivered treats to our staff in the building. We have selected possible names for our local snowplow that the school voted on, and we have had the students in the building add to a thankful poster. We
also do a lot to brainstorm ideas for Teacher Appreciation Week, and we hope to make that week special for our staff. We also hold an ice cream social at the end of every year. As a team, we help raise the spirit in our school. We act as role models for other students, and we help out in any way we can. This committee that does a lot of work in our school.
This is just actually only about half of our kindness crew that we have, the ones that were able to come tonight. It's a big team that really is the student leadership team in our building. But we have a lot of other jobs. We have 70 leadership positions right now in our school that kids have applied for and are excited to do. And it's a fun part of RES, and we love it. So thank you, my friends, that were able to come tonight, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, kindness crew. We heard and understood every single thing you said. That was very impressive.
Now they get cookies.
Now they go. You know, if we had this kind of incentive for our board members, maybe. That was fantastic. Okay. I'm so charmed right now. I lost my, here we go. Ownership linkage, and thank you parents who came to support your student leaders and speakers, public speakers. That was fantastic. Ownership linkage, first read of the community letter. So why there's a slash there? I think it was last year that we decided that the ownership linkage committee would be writing periodic communications out to the community. We had talked about very specific times of year they would go out. This time of year is tricky because we are about to have a printed annual report that has a message from the board to the committee. So what we come up with at this time of year will serve actually as the letter in the annual report, rather than the letter that goes out to the community, which we send out by email and on Front Porch Forum and the Herald and all that good stuff. So you all have a first draft in your packet, and did when it was sent out on Friday, so I hope you've had a chance to read through and come up with comments and suggestions and stuff like that. So the members of this committee, Sam and Ryan, composed the letter. So first, thoughts? Anyone? And this, I bring up their names, but this isn't meant to be a direct criticism of you, nor your writing skills.
You're welcome to criticize my writing.
So there is a lingering sentence.
Oh, good, thank you for catching that.
Upcoming meetings will include discussions on budget timeline, further policy, and the sentence ends there.
Oh, good.
And then they're looking ahead,
No, thank you.
which,
Yes,
good catch, Emil.
good catch, Emil, thank you very much.
And then the only other thought I had is when talking about Rachel Fish, on the we look forward to Rachel's contributions to our board, she really hit the ground running.
Yes.
So I would say, we don't have to look forward to it, we've already benefited.
We're looking
Yes.
She's also
Good
up for
catch.
she's also up for election, so we might not have her much longer. It's not an insult.
Ouch.
No, just the reality of like,
Good, well, thank you for that.
I'm running.
oh yeah.
I have my petition
One thing
filled
I
out
did mean
already.
to do and didn't have a chance to was include the letter from last year so that we could do kind of a comparison, because I do think that something that is in the annual report, we do want to strike a certain tone, and not necessarily kind of a list of accomplishments, but more a this is who we are and together what we can do. That's a personal opinion, but I did mean to include that, and I can forward it after this first read so that people can hear what I'm talking about.
What's the set date for the annual report?
Coming right up on it. We need to, by the end of the, you reserved the 15th as a potential special meeting. And pretty much we're at that's our deadline right there.
So I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Ben Merrill.
Right.
So I can give him this, but then also stuff from you guys, feedback, throw it at him, and he can zhuzh.
We're definitely gonna need to have we are gonna need to use that special meeting
Yeah.
because the state has not finalized a long-term weighted average daily membership number. So we can't we can get really close to a warning and give you an estimate as to where you are with a warning, but without that number, we can't give you the
When will we have that number?
good question.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Like, we can't know where we are building a budget without it.
You cannot know exactly where you are building a budget without it. What's gonna happen, Rachel, is we're gonna be in a spot where that number for us, we're within a couple of what that number will be.
Okay.
So
We have a good idea of what.
it's not gonna be a dramatic change, but in order to warn it the way that it's gonna show up in all of the reports that are later gonna come out, you don't wanna have the wrong number.
Thank you. All right, so the actionable item on this, it sounds like make these 2 minor edits, and then Ben's gonna take it over.
Yeah, with feedback from us, what, if anything, we want him to focus on.
Okay.
I mean, this is a good listing of kind of what we've been working on, so I thought that was a good start. And then Ben always adds a little kind of pizzazz. Some of it is just the kind of the PR. We're here, we're open,
Well, that's good. I mean, the goal of this letter really was to
yeah.
explain to the community what we've been up to.
Yeah, I really like that.
Cool.
I don't know if, I mean, do we want to talk about upcoming meetings? I mean, as one of the public pointed out, and maybe you meant that with this, include discussions on budget timelines. Were you referring to looking ahead to what we may need to be thinking about as we think to the next, believe it or not, the next budget for the next school year, and just sort of, or the discussions about what's going on statewide? So Zoe Saunders has submitted her report. I haven't had a chance to really read it yet, but that we may want to include the public a little bit in where the state is saying they want to see schools going, because we are not the only district dealing with a decline in enrollment and buildings that are not in the best of shape. And so, I mean, we could put some of that in as part of what we're gonna have to be looking ahead at, and including our community to be thinking about those issues with us. So, I would say that's a pretty big thing that we've got on the horizon. It's not right now, but it's definitely on the horizon.
I agree.
I really liked how you included, for the digital community reading, the links in the letter.
Thank you. I thought a link to the facilities feasibility study report would be really important to
Yes.
understand the challenges that Brookfield Elementary and Randolph Union High School are facing structurally. Thank you for that.
Other thoughts? I'll bring it back to our special meeting that we now will have on the 15th. I think we'll say that for every agenda item, we'll just sneak that in. We'll be having a meeting on the 15th. Once I have something back from Ben, I can, if Kyle's putting out the warning, it can go with it. so we can all be prepared to
Do you
be
want
able to go.
email feedback, like, for things that people would like added? Like, if there was a 2-sentence synopsis on the AOE and overall school landscape across Vermont, should somebody take that on?
Yeah, I'll look for your email sometime tomorrow morning before I meet with Ben.
Tomorrow
No, I
morning?
think that makes a lot of sense, and anyone, yeah, if there's stuff that you feel like, you'd really like to see him weave in, meeting with him in the afternoon, so, sorry.
Thank you for doing this work.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
Thank
both
you.
of you, thank you.
Thank you for
Okay.
acknowledging.
I'm gonna at this time just remind everyone here and also those listening and watching that there are open board seats. There are 2 coming up in March, so if you want to get on the ballot, 2 in Randolph and 1 in Braintree, which are currently filled.
Not up.
So,
No.
Sam was not, and Sarah and Rachel Finch. So if you all are interested in rerunning, or anyone listening or watching is interested, please go soon to your town clerk and pick up the paperwork you need. You need to have petitions with a certain number of signatures, depending on the town that you live in.
You can get it on the Secretary of State's website, also, in case you're trying.
And the town website, actually, I went to Brookfield today, and there are PDFs you can
I
print.
couldn't find it there, so.
You're not up. Section.
I couldn't find it in the
Let's
forms.
start. Great, okay, so I'll just say that. Moving on to the big kahuna. This is our budget discussion. I'm gonna hand things over to Michael and Robin. Again, we're gonna hear from them. The board will then have a chance to ask clarifying questions. We'll then move to public comment after them. So board, I think, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to, if you need clarification right away and you're totally confused, to interrupt him at that point and ask a question, but guests, please hold until public comment.
Okay, so we were together about a month ago, and in the board packet, my board report describes our meeting last time. So rather than recap all of that, I would encourage people that the agenda is out online and whatnot. I'll certainly hit parts of it, and if there are parts of the board wants me to really zero back in on, I will do that as well. I will say that in November, we shared with the board a level service budget, a practically level service budget. There were a couple little ads that were in that. And that resulted in a 10.5% increase. At that point, the board said, we really wish paraphrasing obviously here, but they'd love to be able to support that. There was concern that we might not be able to pass a 10.5% increase on the expenditure budget. So asked us to come back and with a budget that was in line with the governor's 3% sort of task that he's working on at the state level, and then also what would a level funded budget look like. So a level funded, as I shared last time, would be a $2.5 million decrease. And so we prepared as an administrative team what $2.5 million worth of reductions would look like in $250,000 increments. And at the board meeting, the board elected to go one level at a time with a verbal, and then in the minutes, we reflected exactly what we talked about, okay? So that's sitting there. At the end of that discussion, or as part of that discussion, it's been mentioned a little bit already today, the administrative team did talk about an alternative way to make reductions that involve reallocating how we used buildings. And the board at that last meeting felt like, what I walked away with felt like, something that maybe we've got to look at some point, but with 6 months' time, that's not really enough time to get people on board. So everything that we did sort of went back to the drawing board with that information in mind. The other two things that were going on at the end of last meeting was that we were really in a place where we were questioning our long-term weighted average daily membership that the state was giving us, because it had dropped by 200 students, and we had in no way, shape, or form dropped by 200 students. So we were trying to figure out what was going on with the state. And so that 200 students is huge in our budget. When we talk about declining enrollment, people are, when you see that, you think, oh gosh, we've lost 200 kids. In fact, that's not what happened. And so after a lot of research with the state, what I discovered, actually many people from our team have heard this from different members of the state. So during COVID, everyone on this board will recall that free and reduced lunch became available to people. And at the same time, I don't know if you were talking about it down here, but up in the islands, we were also talking about how Medicaid eligibility was increasing because we were in COVID and coming out of COVID. And what happened in that process is during COVID and for a little while afterwards, they weren't taking people off of the Medicaid rolls, right? And so last year, and your long-term weighted average daily membership for this year is based on free and reduced numbers from last year, right? What happened there was free and reduced, if you're Medicaid eligible, you're automatically eligible for free and reduced lunch. And that's the poverty. There's three numbers that they gather to track our free and reduced lunch numbers. And the Medicaid one is the biggest of the three. Well, so what's interesting about our long-term weighted average daily membership are really just our ADM, so our actual number of students. Our actual number of students hasn't really changed a ton in any one, the current year, the year before this, and the coming up year projection. We're expecting those all to be relatively the same. So our actual number of students that we have, pretty steady. But what did happen is the 200 student increase that we have right now is being driven by an over-reporting or not clearing the Medicaid rolls. And in fact, what we heard was 36,000 Vermonters were removed from Medicaid in the time frame that has caused the drop that we've got. So what had happened is people had got on when they lost a job or something like that, and they'd been able to stay on until the state of Vermont went through that redetermining eligibility, let's call it that. And so that 200 number is inflated, which means what really happened here was our numbers for this year went up by 200, and if we're really frank about it, it shouldn't have gone up by 200. I will add, as kind of an addition to that, the state of Vermont really wasn't brokenhearted about that, because you all may also remember that in the first year of the state providing free and reduced lunch for everybody, it didn't cost them as much as they expected, because we had a higher number of students that were eligible for free and reduced lunch. And now you know why they were eligible for free and reduced lunch, because we hadn't cleared the Medicaid rolls. So that's part of what helped generate the surplus, or the not as much money being spent on that program as was expected, because all of those students were eligible for federal free and reduced lunch, and that offsets our costs at the state level. Okay, so bottom line is this: I can say with great confidence, and thanks to a lot of work of our registrars and Tina, our technology person who manages data, Our ADMs, average daily membership, matches our average daily membership. Our free and reduced lunch matches what we're reporting for free and reduced lunch, and it is accurate. Now, what's happened in the state is the state has also developed a new process where they are getting the superintendents to sign off and verify that their ADM is accurate. Their ADM is slightly different than the long-term weighted average daily membership. The ADM is actual students. The long-term weighted average daily membership adds in the different weights for things like poverty, special education, English as a second learner, sparsity, etc. We have done that. I heard this morning that there are still 10 districts in the state of Vermont, or supervisory units in the state of Vermont, that have not done that. So the question about when are we going to have the long-term weighted average daily membership number, I have heard that they don't intend to release that until all 10 of those districts have signed off. So we're kind of in that spot that we're in a little bit of a holding pattern there. That said, I can confidently say that I do not expect our long-term weighted average daily membership to vary greatly from what we are projecting it to be. I think that we are pretty accurate. It's possible that it could go up a little bit. It's the direction I'm hoping that it goes. It's maybe possible that it could drop by a teeny tiny little bit, but I generally expect it to be where we projected. Okay? If it goes down, we're going to have a little bit more conversation, because the second thing that you asked us to do was to make sure that we were going to be okay around the excess spending threshold. Now, the excess spending threshold is set in a way to discourage school districts, or maybe to encourage them to think very carefully about spending more than $15,926 per equalized pupil. Okay? And so I took from that and from our meeting that coming to this meeting, you would want, and they didn't want to be on the spot to have to figure it out. If we were over that excess cost threshold, you would want us to be ready to tell you how we could get under the threshold.
And just to be clear for everybody listening, what are the consequences of being over that excess spending threshold?
Great.
Because I understand it is a significant increase in what we pay in property taxes.
It was a very significant increase. I can certainly get there for you,
Thank you.
as we go when you want. But the short, easy answer is for every dollar over the $15,926 that you spend, you're double taxed, right? So not only do you pay the original property tax for that, you pay a penalty. So double taxed on that amount. Okay, so starting at the level service budget. If we went with the level service budget, you would be over the excess spending threshold. Okay, and just for those who are watching for the first time, a level service budget is essentially the level services for what we provide right now. Okay, and so when we look at that, you'd be over the excess spending threshold. It was like a 10.5% overall increase in the expenditure budget. And what that would result in is taxes in Braintree. And I guess I should say this, I haven't said it already once today, I'm slow on it. Everything that I'm about to tell you is an estimate, right? Because not only do I not have the long-term weighted average daily membership from the state, I don't and will not for quite some time have the yield, which the legislature tends to set as one of the last things it does before it adjourns. And the yield is a huge number in actually determining what the tax rate is. So everything that I'm saying about tax rates are estimates. The things I'm saying about budget, those can be spot on. Those are the things that I and you control, but the yield is not something that we control. So with all of the information, the way that it sits right now, so when we're using the yield that came out in the required tax letter that the Commissioner of Taxes puts out on December 1. Okay, here we go. Braintree would go up by 52.25 cents. And when you're thinking
This is
about
at the level,
this is at the level service, okay, with the excess cost penalty. So 52.25 cents per 100 for those that are converting this to what's going on to their property tax. That is $522.50 increase over their current tax, whatever they paid this year for every $100,000. So if you have a $300,000 house, you would be looking at $1,500 plus dollars. Okay?
On top of their
On
current
top of what they paid this year,
It would be,
paid bill,
it would be very.
in addition to.
in
Okay.
addition to that.
Got it.
Yes. Okay, in Brookfield, the increase is 39.54 cents. And so that's $395 per $100,000 house. So a $300,000 house, you're $1,000 in there, more. Okay? And Randolph would be 32.11 cents, or $321 per $100,000 house. So a $300,000 house would be $660. Right? Oh, sorry, 960. Paul, thank you.
900.
Thank you. That's why Robin's sitting right here beside me.
What's the, can you give me the sense of it?
32.11 per 100.
Before this,
This was-
before this meeting, I looked up median house values, I guess that's, in Orange County. They're just over 200, they're just under $200,000. So, you know, for my scenario in Brookfield, if one owns a $200,000 home, their current property tax rate is about $2,720, and it would go up to $3,500. So that's an increase of $780 a year, or $65 a month. So that is what one would face if we passed this level service budget. A significant increase.
Okay, that's the level service. That's everything we've talked about, no changes. You say, go ahead, do it. That's what we would project would happen. Okay?
Michael, how far over the per pupil spending do you
Yep.
anticipate we are?
I know that we are over it by $794.72.
so we're at
Per pupil.
16K something.
So what would that,
Oh,
so then
if you're asking it, if you're asking it that way, Rachel, in order to get down under the excess spending threshold, we had to cut 1.1 million.
Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't asking it that way, but that's great information.
Also good, yeah.
Okay. Sam?
no, I got it.
Okay.
I was just thinking in my head, so there's the increase based on the level service, but that's not taking into account the penalty.
Or is it?
This is.
This is, the
numbers I
rate
gave you
is
have the
taken
penalty.
in-
Okay.
Have the
Okay,
penalty. So that's part of the reason why
The
it's so
next page
high.
is not.
That's part of it, yes.
Got it, okay.
This one is
So
not.
if we cut just the bare minimum down to the threshold, what's our
Okay.
tax rate? Next page.
Because it's
Yep.
below.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're down to
So anticipating that you would want to be under that extraordinary spending threshold, we figured out that we would need to cut 1.1 million. And we were able to go into the budget as we get closer to finalizing and putting pieces together. Here's what you're looking at. So, 1.1 million. Well, when you think about what we presented last time, we went 4 levels deep into the budget reductions, which represented pretty much the $1 million. We're pretty much at the $1 million mark. I really heard from the board and the community, and we knew it going in as administrators. That's why we said at that level that you might want to consider doing something different than this, that pre-K for 3-year-olds at RES was a challenge, and eliminating that was a challenge. So spent a lot of time thinking about that over the next month, and really working with the team and looking at historically where have we been with preschool. So historically we've been right around 60 students, a little under. And under the education quality standards, pre-K is allowed to be up to 20 students. So if we maintain our historical trend, and it looks like we will, we're projecting to be at 58. We could do all 3 and 4-year-olds with 3 pre-K classrooms. Okay? And actually, I learned that historically, that is prior to COVID and ESSER funds being available, that is what we operated with, was 3 pre-K classrooms.
One in each
location. Now, I think what's different here, what I would suggest is that we modify the proposal that I talked about. Instead of saying we would not have pre-K available for 3-year-olds at RES. Instead, what I would say is we would run our pre-Ks, and if we reached a point where our pre-K became full in one of the buildings, the other 2 buildings could accept those pre-K students, right? So we could redistribute where pre-K students were going. Yep, so.
Because we don't obviously know what next year's breakdown is gonna be, but what's the breakdown of pre-K right now by school in terms of students?
Ooh, I have that on a piece of paper sitting in my office. I can give you approximately where we're at, right? So
It's like 10, 13.
I was gonna go 13, 15, and 2 classes of like 15, 16.
So I know that there are a couple people who are raising their hands, and I see a couple raised hands there. So I will pause, because we do have this question from the, yeah?
You do have Kara Houston, who is here, who can tell us that exact answer.
Great. Kara, could you just give us those numbers?
Yeah, so at Braintree, there are 13 students. Brookfield, there are 14. And then we have 14 at Randolph, and then 15 in the other classroom.
14 and 15.
And it's important to note that we would, of course, have at minimum 1 adult for every 10 students as required by statute.
Yeah, but so that's
Thank you,
that's
Kara.
29, and watch me doing quick math. How about that, Rob? Very impressive. At RES.
Okay. So, I think as you look at that, what that says, and Kara and I are the ones that looked at the numbers to get a projection to say, we think we'll be under 60. In fact, if we were betting people right now, we'd put the number at 58, right? But we're 6 months to go, so we'll see what it is. But historically, 60's been a good number for Orange Southwest. Okay, so same effect of what the reduction looks like, but then what it doesn't do is it doesn't eliminate pre-K for 3-year-olds, RES. Okay? It does make it so that, you just heard Kara with the numbers, if we get 58 students, we're going to be looking at 8 classes of 18, 19 students if they're evenly distributed.
And
so they would go on.
1 less head teacher. I mean, there's 1 less classroom.
1 less classroom.
So
with one less amount of the support staff that goes with it
Right.
and whatnot. We got it.
Right.
So the savings.
Does that take into account, are there transportation costs associated with potentially moving kids to a different school?
So pre-K students are not, we don't bus pre-K. Good question. Okay. All right, so the reductions that we had talked about last time with that change,
Just a reminder that we're not taking public comment at this time.
with that change, what would happen is we're still at the $1 million mark. Okay? To get below the excess spending threshold, we needed that next 100,000. Okay? One of the things that we had changed early in the budget is we considered shifting to a 5-day-a-week pre-K, but had decided with level service, we wouldn't add that, right? But we had not updated it throughout the budget files and whatnot. So there were some savings there that we didn't know we had. And then, when you made the decision last time that yes, let's hold to a level tuition budget at the technical center, there were some savings there as well, which made it so that instead of the 100,000 that we needed about 10,000. Okay? So we went into level 5, actually we jumped all the way past level 5 and into level 6. In level 6 we have an expectation that we're going to need $50,000 more of contracted services for our facilities department. And we had $50,000 in level 6. It made more sense to take that right now, 10,000 of it. So we think we're going to need 50. We only are putting 40 into the budget. And that should tell you that we're probably going to have to come to you, we think we're going to have to come to you and ask for 10 out of the building reserve fund, if that happens. And that seemed like it made sense right at the moment. That's what we would do, and that would be how we would get to 1.1 million. Now, questions about how we get to, that's your, at the excess cost threshold. You're at exactly the spot where you get 0 penalty, right? If we spend 1 penny more, you get double taxed on that penny, right? Anything more we spend, you get double taxed on. Or if our long-term weighted average daily membership goes down, we're gonna have to come back and tweak a little bit more. You can probably guess that I'm gonna say, instead of taking $10,000, I've got $40,000 sitting in that contracted services facilities line, and I'm gonna probably come to you there. So that would be logical. Okay? Questions about how we get there? All right, here's what it does to be at the excess spending threshold. Okay? Still cost is an increase. And at Braintree, instead of the 52 cents, we're talking about a 32-cent increase, 32.7. Using that same process, $327,000 per $100,000 house. $327 for 100,000. Yeah. So just about $1,000 for a $300,000 house. All right, Brookfield, 23.5-cent increase. So again, $235 for a $100,000 house. So a $300,000 house, right in the $700 range. And then Randolph, 19 cents. And so $190 on a $100,000 house, a little under $600 for a $300,000 house. Okay. looking at my notes here, I talked about the long-term weighted average daily membership, I talked about that. Answered the question about the double-digit increases, that's declining enrollment, the penalty, those kinds of things. I haven't said anything about the feasibility yet, but I'll get there. That's where I think you find yourself from a budget standpoint.
Can we just review what that means in terms of what we're cutting out?
You want me to-
I took notes, but,
you want me
It's
to-
in the packet, levels
Okay.
1 through 4.
okay. Oh,
It
right,
is.
right, so we're going what, but we're.
That's not it.
That's not it. Oh, okay, all right, just so that I remember what and so we are basically have been able to stay away from
Yeah, that's
staff with the exception of the pre-K, right?
No, there's definitely some staffing in there, so
First was
the very first reduction I made was at the administrative level, it was the HR directing position, and reducing it down to something more like a benefits coordinator kind of position. There was, so off the top of my head here, there was the, oh, look at this.
There were a couple of positions that are not filled, so the driver and the facilities person.
You bet.
Both are vacant at this time.
Should we just go through everything so people know what's on the table?
Sure. Okay.
And I will remind the board, sorry, I just want to, so just to review what our roles are here as the board, what we do when we approve a budget is we're approving a number. We are approving a top level number, and we authorize the cabinet to figure out how to get to that number. So, like Michael said, he got the feeling that we all were very uncomfortable with losing preschool for 3-year-olds, and he picked up on that, and he can use that information, but that is not something that we dictate as a board, okay? Rachel?
I feel like I get input from people in the community. And I feel like though it's not my role to decide how the education works, it is my role to share what I've heard.
Yeah.
So I have to say that I've heard overwhelmingly from the people I've spoken with about concerns about being kind of top heavy with administration. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. And I know that you sit with your cabinet, which is all top level people who are not going to cut themselves.
Although
and
the
who have a
first cut I took was from somebody who sits on the cabinet.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say a timeout,
Yeah.
because we're getting into comments here, and at this point, we're presentation and then clarifying questions. But point taken that,
So I understand that we are not the managers, we are the governance.
right,
I get that. And so I'm not ever gonna decide, but it's also, I think, in our purview to be having discussions about these
absolutely,
pieces.
absolutely, which is where Michael got the information last meeting about going, and yeah.
Of course.
I just wanted to, because we like details and we like the list and it's very clear and there are numbers, that we are not here to say,
These are the
let's swap the gardening with, the art supplies.
Right.
That's not,
Right,
we don't have a say there.
That is what we have hired you for.
that's right.
That is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like me to buzz through the list, or would you like people to reflect from the list from the written format of it? I'm happy to do either. If I go quickly through the list, I don't intend, so when I went through the list the first time, there was commentary that went with it
Yeah.
about how we would supplement or get to those kinds of things. I guess what I would do is I would say to people who are curious about the list and how we arrived at those, I think the best thing to do is to pull up the recording from last meeting and look at that list to say,
That's fair.
what were we thinking about each of those? Because there was a lot of thought that went behind
Yeah.
every single one of these reductions and why they were there. And I can do that again. You'll get done this meeting very late.
No.
No, yeah,
Not
it's-
asking for detailed.
Well,
Do the
yeah.
people online have access to this?
They do.
Yes.
Okay, then we're all set.
The packet is accessible, and I also it's because some of these are vacant positions, I think it needs that information rather than this dry list, but
Cool.
that's personal.
Thank you.
Can you bust through it really quickly without commentary? A little bit of comment.
I can do whatever the board wants me to do. Is that what the board would like me to do?
Why are you giving me a hairy
Yeah.
eyeball?
A hairy eyeball,
Just read it off,
blind eyeball.
real quick.
And you're the board chair here. Do you want me to buzz through? Is the board giving me that there's a consensus that that's what you want?
I don't, whatever you want, but.
The request has been made, so let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, here you go. So the very first cut that I made was or that we're suggesting, would be eliminate the HR director, to change to a benefits coordinator with a $50,000 savings. I'm sorry, I can't do it without commentary. The savings
I'm
is.
noticing that, I might have to take
Okay, then-
over for you.
then-
You might. But I think
You're just
that
reading
it's
off the
important for people to understand
That's
that.
what's tricky about reading it as.
Yeah.
Can we
Without,
just identify which positions are vacant?
yes, the driver, that's in level 1, the facilities person, that's in level 2.
The sped paras. Three sped paras in level 3.
This, say it again?
The 3 sped paras in level 3.
3 sped paras
those
are
are all
level
vacant.
3, that's
Those are all vacant.
second
Those
to
are
last.
proposed, that was the part from last time where it said it's a level service budget mostly.
Gotcha.
Those are
Gotcha.
not making sure. Yeah. Those are the vacant positions.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay? So I'm hearing I'm not buzzing through because
You
I
are
can't
not.
do it
You are
without commentary.
incapable of buzzing.
So let's not do it then. Let's just move on to the next.
Great. Are you done?
I think, unless
Okay.
there's something that you had clarifying questions about.
Okay. Right, that's where we are now. More questions from the board. Thank you for entertaining them during the presentation as well, because I think that when they occur to people, they need to ask them. Okay? Okay. I will now move on to the public comment portion on this agenda item. There is a 2-minute limit per speaker. It is 7:06 now. Once we get to, I'm gonna call it 7:30, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna ask the board if they want to continue with public comment. We'll take a vote, and then either continue it or not. All right, and I'm gonna keep time on my phone. I'm gonna go back and forth between people in the room and people online, and I am gonna interrupt you at 2 minutes. Please stop speaking at that time, just to save time. Okay, I'm gonna start online because I heard a bebop thing. Noise. 2 minutes, there we are. Gabby Pisani, please. Sorry about.
Gabby, you're muted.
Is that good?
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gabby Pisani. I'm a second grade teacher at Randolph Elementary. I just want to point out that although the para positions remained vacant this year, that does not signify that there is not a need for those positions. And so I caution people at kind of accepting that just because they were vacant, they are not a need. They're an extreme need. The stress that occurs at Randolph Elementary trying to fill vacant positions because those positions are empty is very, it doesn't feel very good. And the reason those positions are empty is because I don't think we're compensating people well enough for what they're being asked to do. And so if we're eliminating them just because they're vacant, maybe we need to do a needs assessment for other positions and getting back to talking about the top-heavy administration.
May I just add right here at this spot, just so that we're clear about what these positions are? These positions do not exist currently in the budget. So the vacancies that Gabby's talking about are vacancies that are in this year's budget. Those were put in as placeholders in case we needed them next year. And just so that everybody understands what those particular vacancies are and why they're vacant, because they're not in the budget.
Well, we have current vacancies now at Randolph Elementary.
Yes,
So
that's a true story.
I'm not sure.
Those are
Okay.
not being eliminated.
Those are not being eliminated. That's a true story too.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Gabby. In the room? Yes.
I'm Nori Belanger. I'm a pre-K teacher at Braintree this year, and I am the face of the job that will be eliminated. I've retired once from teaching, and I'll go back into that oblivion, not quite so happily, because I do enjoy teaching. I'd also take another position that opened up. So this is not about me. What it's about is 20 children in a pre-K classroom. Pre-K is nothing like it was 45 years ago when I started. Pre-K is quite difficult. You can have upwards of 10 children who are not potty trained. You don't have a special educator at your beck and call at any time. You have high trauma rates in this district. So I just caution you about putting 20 children in a pre-K classroom. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Online, Emma Janicki.
Hi, this is Emma Janicki. I wanted to agree with what Gabby is saying, but I will move on from that particular point. If they are, I guess, potentially funded for next year, but not this year, I would again say eliminating any para positions doesn't eliminate the need for those positions, whether it is vacant or not. And connecting with this is the idea of being top heavy in administration, because we have vacant positions for very much needed paraprofessionals at Braintree. It has fallen onto substitute teachers, our one single special ed teacher, and other people in the building to fulfill paraeducator positions. Instead of having administrators come in and help, it has been people who are already student facing and who already have jobs in the classroom and in the school to fulfill those needs. So students are not receiving their legally required services. So could there be an option in which administrators, for example, a position that was created only last year for an assistant special ed director, could they come in and provide those legally required services? Additionally, I would like to thank the board members. I think there was 2 of them last meeting who did advocate for releasing the full 10 level option of cuts. I think that would be really beneficial for taxpayers, educators, and parents to see exactly what costs are associated with some different positions. And I did want to thank Rachel Fish for, again, bringing up the idea of, it sounds like the public is saying we are top heavy with administrators, and that student facing roles maybe shouldn't be at the beginning of the level service, and we should instead look at what are the full 10 levels and what do things cost. So thank you.
Thank you, Emma, perfectly timed. Thank you for your comments. In the room? You know what, if you don't mind waiting, just because you had a chance to speak before, sir, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, my name is Seth McCoy. I just had a couple of questions and points, I guess, to raise.
What town are you from?
I'm from Randolph Center.
Thank you.
My children are up at Brookfield Elementary.
Thank you.
And those are, I work in emergency medical services, and so one of my big things is safety. And another one, I'm an athletic trainer as well, so it's injury prevention. And so my thing with safety at the schools is with the proposal of larger class sizes, less paraeducator assistants in the classroom, so that would be that prevention. And then with a thinner spread nursing staff through the system would be the tail end of potential injuries and that kind of thing. So that would be one thing that I would think really needs to be addressed. If we're not addressing it beginning of the pipe or the end of the pipe, it's going to cause a lot more problems and of a physical nature. I mean, actuary plays itself out. So that would be one of my big concerns, and any cuts we're considering is safety. So in the classroom, outside the classroom, and just whole facility-wide and whole system-wide. So not to put too much pressure on any one person. We share the load, we all have to worry less. So that's one of my big points I wanted to make.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Kramer, 1321.
Sorry about the name. Hi, I'm Sean Kramer, Randolph resident. Thank you for your time. So local residents have historically been very generous here. They accept a high tax burden of education as a laudable goal, but they are being squeezed from multiple areas. We can't ask much more of the residents, so I caution against putting forward any budget with large increases. There is a problem when a town so generous can't afford to educate their children. This is unsustainable. So I grabbed data from the Vermont State Database for what is causing these increases. Here are data points for Randolph High School, which is just the high school between 2004 and 2021. 2004, there were 12.5 students per teacher. In 21, there were 16.2 students per teacher, which is an increase of almost 30%. In 04, there was one administrator for every 23 teachers. In 21, it was one administrator for every 7 teachers, an increase of 231% in administration, which has more than tripled. From 04 to 21, the average teacher salary increased by 44.8%, but the median household income in Vermont increased by 60.7% during that time. So the data show that our teachers are doing more work for relatively less spending power. They also show that there's an unsustainable increase in administrative positions. And given the growth trend in admin, I fear that we lose these elementary schools only to encounter more budget problems before long, having now forfeited the invaluable educators in Brookfield and Braintree who are second to none. We've been in seriously difficult times, and I don't foresee a respite. I strongly advocate we find room in the budget by removing admin positions rather than losing these exceptional elementary schools. And I don't see the public supporting a budget that does not do something about the trend in these positions. So I propose even asking residents if they'd volunteer time to make the needed fixes for the buildings. I would gladly volunteer time and resources to make renovations. I trust that I'm not alone. To the extent that there are legal ramifications which might theoretically limit us from volunteer work, I imagine we could devise a resolution to absolve the school district from liability. And I empathize that this means people would lose jobs, and I wish that no one would lose jobs. But I suggest we earnestly consider radical administrative changes to preserve the infrastructure we have for actually educating our children. Thank you.
Thank you. In the room, I feel really guilty about last time that I had him stand up and then sit down. So I am going to let this gentleman speak next, but we will get to everyone else.
Okay, I'll be quick. Kyle Obenauer, Brookfield, and I think I've heard similar comments about administration costs in our district, and I think for me personally, looking at the way I understand the different levels, we have essentially what will become a pot of money, and where things like cutting art supplies for $1,500 is listed. Maybe that might not happen, maybe it will, but for me, it's tough to reconcile things like cutting art supplies for $1,500, cutting farm to school for $9,000. Looking back at last year's report for the district, I saw, and again, our administrators, I know, have a lot of duties and responsibilities. A lot of those are state requirements that we're stuck with. But looking at that report, at least my interpretation was there was a 24% increase in the central office budget, which was over $200,000 just in salary and benefits. So I think myself and maybe others, maybe we could hear more from the board about those administrative costs increases. Just from my perspective, that's sort of, I'm on the same page as a lot of other people. So maybe more information could be helpful, but I do see where those concerns are coming from. We're talking about such small amounts of money in our budget that have a huge impact on students. And we see things like a 24% increase in central office budget. That's tough to reconcile. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Michelle Edlund?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm a parent from Brookfield. I also want to reiterate the same point that I feel that pulling funding from the students as your first tiers is a very big mistake for our futures, especially for early ed and for para support services. I am benefiting from those vacant positions going from year to year. We're working to help raise a child in the foster care system who is benefiting from the ability to get a para this year, and the Brookfield staff has gone above and beyond to support her in so many different ways, and you need to have those allotments in your budget from year to year in order to support kids so that as they grow and as they age, they're able to make progress and gains and not continue to need all of those services, but to take those out and to pull the support from the students who need it most, especially in the young grades, is very detrimental to the overall ability for the school system to function as the kids grow up. And I also think that you need to look into the legality of 3-year-olds coming in and 4-year-olds coming in who need services and running out of preschool spaces for them. It's not legal to refuse services, and it's not legal to require parents to transport them out of district or to a different school within the district, in my knowledge of special education law. So that would also cause an increased transportation cost. So please look into those issues, and please make sure we're supporting the students, because it's the most important thing we can do as a community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the room, yes, with the
Brad Mexier from Brookfield. I currently have a 3-year-old in Brookfield today. A couple notes and questions. Increased property taxes are pushing middle class younger families out of the state, and that's a lot of that's due to increased taxes. And then that's just going to lead to more decreased enrollment, causing cost per student to go up. If Brookfield is to merge with Braintree, will bus routes expand to the current Brookfield elementary region? If you don't, it's going to increase drive times. My wife works, she's driving every day, potentially up to 3 times a day if we have another child, pre-K and the kindergarten. This will be unpopular. Stop providing food, a free meal for every kid, regardless of income. You know, if you're not teaching them how to provide for their kid, they're not going to. They're just going to keep taking a handout. Reduce the handouts to families that can afford to pay their own food bills. People do closer to particular schools to get into those districts, and then you take that away from them. I purchased my father-in-law's property in Brookfield. My wife grew up there, and she didn't get to go to Brookfield because her mom worked in Montpelier, couldn't make the games and schedule it. We moved there hoping that our kid could go to Brookfield and experience that. And then with the vacant positions, open those positions to current employees, the increase in their salary, did not hire somebody new, which will increase the overhead and the benefit packages for that. I work average 60 hours a week. I believe that everybody can. So pulling yourself for 40 hours a week shouldn't be the criteria. That's why I have.
Thank you, sir. Online, anyone? Okay. In the look, Adam.
Sorry, I was hesitant again. I just wanted to point out a couple things. We do currently have a couple preschoolers who are riding the bus. I think if families wanted to push that, they could push that. So I think we do need to look into transportation if you are talking about sending kids to other schools than the town they live in. I also just want the community to know that we have done 20 students in the past, and we have made the choice to keep it at 15, because I don't know if anyone with their own kid knows how hard it is to get one kid in a snowsuit. If you have to put 20 kids in snowsuits, it takes more than an adult and their 2 helpers. This year, I also had 5 students who are in diapers. So one of my paras is spending time basically doing potty turns and in the bathroom for their day. So I think hiring the number of students and lowering the number of paras is just a recipe for disaster. I have my own child who could attend preschool next year, and knowing that the class size will be 20 kids and she will have to be in my classroom makes me not even want to send her there, because I know the chaos that she will have to ensue by being there. By having 2 classes, we can separate behaviors. Also having 3-year-olds on IEPs be the kids who get the first spots. Those kids have higher needs. We're going to be hiring one-on-ones. So by arranging the staff, it sounds like a quick, easy fix to shove kids in different places, but just think about all of the kind of side effects that will and negative outcomes that will come from making those switches. That is all.
Thank you. In the brown hat here, you had your hand up before and I didn't call on you. Did you still want to speak?
I do. So I understand that budget talks.
Your name and town of resident, please. That's okay.
Sorry, Julie Bristol, Alberto.
Thank you.
I understand that budget discussions are really difficult for meetings and discussions that all over the story having heard of increased taxes. But I am working in this school every single day with the neediest children, and needs are not decreasing, they are increasing. I already have children who don't have supports that they ought to have, and when I say ought to, I mean because they need them. We don't have enough paraprofessionals. We don't have enough of, we don't have enough space in the school. We have children who have curriculum classrooms. We don't have anywhere else in the school that they can be so that they can be more successful. We have so much of myself included, other teaching staff, or principals who are having to cover either for paras or other teachers, or who are having to help with behavior issues. So we're bursting at the seams. The behaviors are through the roof, the needs are increasing exponentially. And I don't have an answer, but I think we can just think in financial terms, even though I know the budget needs thinking in financial terms. We have to think about all of the little human beings here who we want to have good education, who we want to have the supports that they need, and in order to get that good education, we have children who don't have any challenges, whose education is being interrupted by those who do, because we don't have enough staff to help deal with it. We don't have enough space to help deal with it. So I'm just asking that in these considerations, and I hear you, but please try to also consider what those financial decisions mean in real terms.
Thank you. So Emma Janicki, but I believe it's a different speaker.
Yes, my name is Ezra. I'm a paraprofessional at Braintree Elementary. My first request of the board would be that when you're considering the peak spending level that you're going to be setting, which I'm trying to adapt the language that you used, I would ask you to consider to what degree we can believe that the cabinet will listen to the requests of the public in considering their own positions and compensations as available to be cut. What I mean by that is we have to trust our administration to listen to the public and cut themselves. And I wonder if that should be part of the calculation in the board's decision about what to set the peak spending for the next school year at. I also want to talk about the late bus because I believe that is in one of those first 4 blocks of cuts. And I want to talk about it in terms of inequality. The late bus is a thing that provides access to after-school programs for kids who might otherwise not be able to attend things like tutoring and a variety of other programs that benefit kids and should benefit kids equitably. And the late bus is something that the district can do to help as many kids as fit on a bus, which is up to 72 if you're putting 3 in a seat, I believe. And to do so in as fair a way as possible. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Jonathan, point of clarification. That excess spending limit is set by the state, is not set by us, correct, Michael? Correct. Thank you.
In the room. Yes, Mr. Landry.
Two things. Do I need to restate my name?
Oh, you're good.
So I noticed in this packet, it explains levels 1 through 4. Are the rest of the levels that were originally proposed going to come out of her leadership at some point?
They weren't actually proposed to the board.
Okay, so
it was built by the administration.
Right. Are they going to become available at some point, just in case we get to a point where they look at all the options, we're still not seeing everything? For the sake of having all the information on the table, what were the rest of the options? So I'm just asking if it is going to become available at some point. The second thing is, I just want to restate my earlier statement of please consider looking for alternative revenue streams. Grant writing is great. And I think if you can get more than administrative staff to do grant writing, you can do some pretty good things with it. And also look at the software specifically pumps. That's all.
Thank you. It is 7:30, so keeping to my own rule, I'm going to pause here and ask the board if we want to continue with public comment. Are there more public comments? Yes, I have a few hands up. If you're done with your public comment but forgot to unraise your hand, just a reminder to bring it back down. But yes, I have 3 there and a couple of people in the room. Couple. I move that we can take public comment for 10 minutes. I second that. 10 minutes, seconded by Sarah. Further discussion? All those in favor, audibly, visibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We will continue with public comment. Thank you. I think I'm in the room. No, that was Mr. Landry. Callie Hastings. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Callie Hastings, please. You are muted. Oh, and you may have even walked away from your seat. Callie Hastings? You're muted. It's your time to speak. What's this? What? Okay. Tammy White, you want to go ahead?
Hi there. I am a paraeducator in the Braintree Preschool and also have children in the Randolph Elementary and High School. And I just wanted a little clarification from Michael about the savings line item for cutting the preschool classroom at RES. I think it was a $202,000 savings. Could you explain that a little bit more in detail? What is exactly that would be cut?
Question noted, but I want to keep going with comments. So can someone note that that's a question we want to get to? If we could. Got it. Ms. Hastings. Okay, I'm going to go. Tammy, did you have more to say?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just stick with us through the comment and we'll get to your question. I'm going to go to someone in the room to keep my rhythm. And then Callie, we'll be right after that. Okay, thank you. In the room, Lisa?
Yes. So my name is Lisa Wright, and I work for Randolph Elementary. So I'm going to speak on behalf of the heroes. I understand what the pre-K has. They have a lot of kids that they need to have an extra person in there, especially if they are in diapers. They go outside all the time. And if you are going to eliminate a class, then you need to have parents. You need to have just not just teachers that are in there. You need to have an extra person. You cannot bring in 20 kids. It just can't. And with the parents, I'm a parent, I'm a building parent, but I don't do just parent work. I do GI work, I work in the office, I sub all the time. And we need more parents. There are students that are not getting what they need to get. They're getting left behind, as I see. And those are positions that can't be cut. And we need to have a.
Thank you. Callie, you want to go ahead?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Callie Hastings from Brookfield. So I'm new to this whole world, and I will just say I may be speaking and not knowing what I'm talking about, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So I'm observing as a newcomer, there's a lot of tension between admin and kind of front-facing jobs, and there's a lot of I feel like the front-facing job people needing to advocate for themselves, which makes for sense because there's a lot of cuts in there that would affect them. I'm wondering how empowered the people on the ground doing the direct services are to come up with suggestions for how to work on the budget. Are they part of the process? Are you looking at each classroom, each set of teachers, each set of whatever librarians, art teachers, and saying, what do you think you could do to help solve this problem? Like, is there a group problem solving mentality? I'm not totally picking up on one, and I'm wondering if that's part of this process. I know that can often be really hard in bureaucratic processes, but usually the people who are on the ground, like, they can come up with amazing ideas if they're given that kind of, if they're given that voice. And so I'd really encourage that if that isn't happening, even if it takes more time. I think we're all very aware that we have huge problems as a society that we're trying to overcome, and like getting everyone on the same team is where people will be most powerful in doing that. I also wanted to say, I loved the comment earlier from Kramer, I can't remember your first name, about getting community involved in renovations of the building. I had that exact thought after the last meeting, and I was like, if people really care, they will show up for stuff like that. And yes, liability and all those issues, but like, can we get some more creativity and innovation in this whole process, even though it's like by nature not that? But I think that's where you can actually solve problems in new ways. Because a lot of the old ways just aren't working. So that's kind of my plug for trying to look at things with a little bit of a different lens if we can at any point in this process. Thanks.
Thank you. In the room, Rachel, did you have something? Yep.
Yes, Rachel Drew, I'm a pre-K teacher here in Randolph. And I'm a resident of Bethel, but my question, I just was the same as Tammy White. I'm just wondering, I couldn't remember which specific positions. I know there was a pre-K teacher position. I couldn't remember how many para positions.
Thank you. Erin Pomeroy?
Hi, yes, my name is actually Erin Pomeroy Wakefield. I'm a parent of 3 students at Brookfield Elementary. My daughter currently is in the 3-year-old program, and it's half day, 4 days a week. And we were so hoping that next year was going to be 5 days, full day program, 5 days a week, you name it. And that's not exactly what I'm hearing. I'm asking for clarification for that from Michael, just to make sure that if it's 3 classrooms, is it 5 days a week, or is it still 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday? Again, I'd also agree with all the other comments before me that are talking about looking from the top down, being crucial for the budgeting instead of just taking services from the youngsters. Currently, this district does not do contract work with outside agencies such as BIs or agencies that work directly with behavior management, which would save the district, which has saved the district tons of money. However, thinking about cutting more special ed para jobs is not going to be beneficial for anyone, including the students that it's being cut from. The para educators in those classroom roles are assisting with the students, but also with the classroom productivity. If you're cutting those roles, then you're cutting the productivity of the classroom itself as a whole, and therefore impacting more than just the special ed student that's requiring those services. You're impacting the classroom as an entire whole. I really do think that as a district, you guys need to be looking at administration down, not bottom up. Thank you.
Thank you. As we're nearing the agreed upon 10-minute extra time that the board voted on, I'm going to call it done after Lisa and Amy speak because they already have their hands up. So Lisa, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lisa Becker. I work in Randolph. I live in Randolph Center, work in Brookfield Elementary School. And I wasn't clear when Michael was going through the list, was the part about the nurses being cut still part of the deal of cutting the budget?
Okay. You are officially on the list of questions that we're going to answer when this public comment is done. Did you have anything else?
Well, I have a comment about that I was going to comment about it if that's still on the table.
It is still on the table. It is not all nursing. It is, I believe, 2 half-time.
Correct. And those would be Brookfield and Braintree, which leaves, basically worked out to 2.5 days with a nurse and 2.5 days without a nurse. And the 2.5 days without a nurse is the administrative assistant responsibility. And I don't think being that administrative assistant, I know that I'm not qualified to be a nurse. And if a medical emergency came up, I am not qualified to take care of that. And I just want that to be on record. And I want, people in the community to know that, we need a nurse in the building full time. Her door is like open all the time. It's revolving. The kids are in and out. It is not a position that should be cut. That's all I have to say. Oh, okay. And I agree with, I am willing to pitch in and help with any repairs if it ever comes to that. That is all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lisa. And our last comment on this topic, Amy Ferris.
Hi, my name is Amy Ferris. I'm a parent and farmer from Braintree and teacher at Brookfield. So I'm well aware of the impact of increased taxes. However, I feel strongly we really need to develop a budget that has students' interests mentally, emotionally, and physically first. I would second the concern that our administration costs are way too high, particularly at the high school, tech center, and central office. The foundation for good citizens, employees, and lifelong learners starts at the pre-K and elementary levels. The more successful those years are, the more successful adults will have. Please keep our small schools and reconsider where the cuts are.
Thank you very much, Amy. And thank you everyone for making the time to be here, speaking so honestly and asking good questions. At this point, I want to let the board have a nice long conversation and have questions, but I do want to go specifically to the questions that were asked. If that's okay with you, Michael and Robin, we're going to have most of those answers. I believe the first one was about the number for pre-K, because when it was on the list, it was at 202,000, although that was when it was cutting pre-K for 3, but it's the same number.
So it's a teacher, 3 paras.
It's a teacher and 3 paras.
That's one classroom.
That's one classroom. Great. Does that, I believe that answers the question. Okay. I believe it is for pre-K, we're talking about 4 days, half days. So it is, right? So it's staying the same.
4 days, full days for 4-year-olds and
4 days, half days for 3-year.
yes. The 3-year-olds are a half day.
Okay. Great. And the nurses, but I think, so that Lisa can make her comment, I think we did. Yeah, there, it's going down to 0.5 Braintree, going down to 0.5 for Brookfield, and going down to 1 from a 1.5 at RU.
And Frank asked if the rest of the things were coming out.
And I guess the rest of the things are gonna come out, which, you know, unless the board.
Simple answer is no.
The simple answer is no. Yeah, thank you. You know, as I understand it, the way it works is the cabinet came together after talking to their own staffs in each building, came together and kind of put together a list, a prioritized list of what the cuts would be. We started with 1%, went to 2%, went to 3%, and stopped at 4%. So at this time, this is the time for the board to discuss with each other and ask questions. And please try not to be commenting online because it is publicly recorded, and that's giving you a leg up on the people who are not being allowed to public comment anymore, and everyone else online. So I'm going to open it up. Board members.
I have a question. Maybe we can all answer it together for me. Can you legally make it a recommendation that a child needs to be bathroom trained, potty trained in order to get into the preschool program, especially not if they have disabilities? Right. Well, disabilities aside.
I mean, I think it has to, I can't speak for any of them. Does anyone know the legal?
I don't know about the legal. I do recall the communication that it was encouraged for when my own child entered it, for what that's worth.
Do you see Kara Houston, who takes care of pre-K for us?
Yep.
Specialist. Kara, are you hearing the question? Are you?
Yeah, we fall under the regulations for the CCD. And so we follow the licensing regulations underneath that, which doesn't have any specific policy or regulation stating that we cannot take in kids that are not potty trained. So, you know, we take in all kids, right? Like that's what's important. And so there's no policy or regulation saying if they are not potty trained, they cannot come to pre-K.
Ask a follow-up question sort of related to that. Are you utilizing services like occupational therapy or the continence program through the I-team at the state level to support your classrooms that have your pre-K classrooms with a high number of kids requiring that level of support?
Kara, I'm going to come to you again.
In terms of additional support outside of the district, is that what you're asking, Emily?
It's Emile.
Emile, sorry.
It's okay. Are you utilizing additional services like occupational therapy within the district? I understand that we have those contract services.
Yes.
They would be able to work with the I-team at the state level who has a continence program. Are we utilizing those services?
We contract out with PT and OT, and so they come and provide services to our pre-K students. We do not utilize the I-team for pre-K. It could be an option if we dipped into our budget to do that, but it's not a contracted service at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to answer any other questions about pre-K in general.
I have a question about the nursing piece. So Brookfield and Braintree, they go from a full-time down to a half, is that correct?
at Braintree and Brookfield last year, each had a halftime that went up to, so part of those 200 extra students.
Yeah.
Allowed money in the budget, and they added in halftime at each of those, so there is a full time at each of those there. So it goes back to what it was last year.
I see. I understand. Thank you. So that individual who is currently a full-time goes down to a half-time, is that correct? Or what happened?
I don't think we talk about individual at this individual positions. When there are reductions in force, they are made based on your collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you for that clarification.
So let's talk about administrative costs. It's kind of came up again and again, and let's have a wide open conversation about it.
Yeah.
So I understand that the first thing listed on here is administrative cost. I've heard some comments that included some data about the rise in pay and people in on the administrative end of things. So I'm interested to know if there is a way to skim or restructure or let's have the conversation. I don't know how to get it started, but it's like this big bear.
Well, sure. So I'll start this conversation by saying to Ezra that I am an administrator who cut my own position. I did that when I was the superintendent of the Essex County Supervisory Union in the Northeast Kingdom, and I advocated for 2 years to close the Essex County Supervisory Union and merge it with other districts. So yes, there are people on our cabinet that will advocate for cutting positions for sure at the administrative level. I think one of the things that you need to think about as a board when you look at this, and we're talking about administrative level, we have a full-time principal in we have 3 buildings with approximately 100 students in each of those buildings. Each of them have full-time administrators in that. So that's a place, but I think that there's not a person online who would say that that's where we should go. I think that last time we talked, 3 positions in particular came up, right? So the assistant superintendent position came up. And I think that I talked about that last time, and I think I said 4 times I was wrong. It's much higher than that, right? So that position is bringing in a lot of revenue. The next position that people talked about was an assistant special education director. And do I love the title of assistant special education director? I do not. Right. So in previous budgets, you had contracted services to help people troubleshoot really challenging special education cases. And that person was able to, we were able to contract for, I don't know, 30 to 50 days. Right. What has happened now is instead of contracting that out, we hired a person in a role that is called assistant special education director. The reason that it's called Assistant Special Education Director is because that allows us to access federal funds in the IDEA grant, right? And so half of that salary is covered by federal funds and has no impact on your budget. So from your local budget standpoint, that administrative position is half in your budget, other half is federal funds. And instead of having somebody that can troubleshoot for somewhere between 30 and 50 days, we now have somebody who can be there for 260 and is in and working with families on a regular basis. I forget what the third one was.
I think assistant principal having the two
Yeah.
positions.
Okay.
I have a quick question though, before you go on with the, about the special, the assistant director. So in order to access those funds, it has to be an assistant director position?
Well, the assistant director position lets us access those funds. So is there other creative ways in the grant funding? Could we call it something else? Maybe. But by calling it assistant special ed director, it made it clear and easy that it was going to be funded by that grant. There was no question about it. And so we have access that way. Could I get creative in a different way and maybe draw those funds? Yes.
Well, and I don't, it's not the title I have an issue with. I just wonder, so it's about half and half, grant funded, budget funded?
True.
Yes, and just a note, the IDAB money is for special ed only.
Right, so does it need to be at that level? This is so tricky. I'm just gonna say this out loud. This, you feel like you're talking about specific people because you are, and that just feels awful. But, so making it a position that is the grant funded amount and an equal amount from the budget, could, I'm gonna say this simply, could it just be the grant funded salary and not at that high supervisory level?
Yeah, I think, Hannah, the reason that that's not at the, that it is in the cuts. If you had kept going and said, no, we're not okay with the increases that you're looking at, that position is in the reductions, right? As we keep going down the levels, we would get there. So yes, I could do that at some point. Now, what this position is able to do is, because there's pieces, this job, there's two really big things. One, it works as a consulting person within the schools to address the needs of individual students, right? And two, what it does is it works to support us at the state level when we're trying to figure out, hey, this person is, we've heard a couple times that people aren't getting the services that they need, whatever, but so there's a process that goes through, and that position helps work with that. If we take that position away, the work that's done by that position gets picked up by principals. And I think our folks would say our principals are pretty busy. I don't think that they're sitting there saying that our principals are not busy. So that's where that work would be. That work came off of principals so that they could be more present in the buildings with individual students and whatnot, as that position and those positions handled the administrative side of special education. So there's always a trade-off, and that's why that position isn't coming out of that. And I understand the concept of front facing. And because that position is taking care of administrative tasks that principals don't have to take care of at that point, it allows the principal to be more front facing. Makes sense? And so this, I think that's sort of the piece, that's sort of the piece around this. The high school piece, where there is an additional, what's titled assistant principal right at the moment, or associate dean of students, there it is. Okay, and so what happened with that, Heather is probably better at describing this because this was a change that we made as we were going into the year. She didn't give you the details, I'll give you the high level. We took positions that had responsibilities that were similar to what a dean of students does, but were on teacher salary, so in the teacher contract, and moved it into that administrative. Heather, give you the exact details there.
Yes, so during the time that request was made from administration to add a dean of students role, it was required that they stayed within the budget of the positions being replaced. So we had attrition, we lost the assistant principal, and we lost another position. And so basically, the principal was compelled to hire two people with that same money.
It moved it in the budget, but it didn't increase the money. So it moved it from the guidance line to the admin line. The person is still there, the same employee, doing slightly more, actually a lot more student intervention work. Because at the time they could not do things like deal with suspension level because they were in the wrong lane. And to deal with things that really needed an admin, they had to stop and wait and not do the work, and now they can. So that was that one. What we have increased over the past 3 years is we added another principal at Randolph Elementary School. And as you may remember, this campus ran for years with one principal, and that was a full addition. Historically, the Braintree and Brookfield shared their principals to some extent with Randolph Elementary to have 3 principals at the elementary level that covered all 3 campuses. So that was in the past 3 years. I just started thinking, I could not figure out where the person who commented said that there was a 200% increase. I couldn't figure that out. So those are the 2 I can really speak to.
What about the tech?
The tech center, that's interesting because they added an assistant director.
Yeah.
However, they were compelled this year to do level tuition. So other things were balanced out to make that work. There's no increase in tuition from the tech center this year.
Right, and this is the tech center, the tech center that you're talking about here is its own budget. I don't know if you want to mix and match right now.
It's not part of this budget. Right, but I think when people think administration, I think they think about that.
Yes.
So it's just to provide that information.
It's true. And also our administrative assistants are in the admin line. And also on this campus, we added an administrative assistant in the past few years. So there have been some additions. However, I wonder if those positions would be considered, in what taxpayers really want to keep.
When I thought that an assistant principal was the third one that had come up specifically last time, I actually thought, I assumed it was the one here in this building, not RU.
They're both new-ish in the past couple of years. However, the one on this campus is actually a new position, and the one at the high school was a reconfigured current employee to be able to do more work.
But not new this year.
Not new this year.
Right, because essentially, so what is we did shift. So one of the things that I think every teacher that's on this would agree with me, that as a first, you know what, I won't speak for the teachers here. As a first year teacher, I will tell you that I worked really hard and I liked my kids. And by the time I was a 7th year teacher, I was a way better teacher than I was in that first year. I still worked hard and did all that, but I had a lot of experience. Same thing applies to administrators, right? My first time as an administrator, my first year as an administrator, definitely worked hard. Wasn't as good as where I am now. Didn't understand different things. Have to figure out as you learn. It's just like anything else. So in this building's situation, what has happened is we've gone from, we had 2 principals in the building. There was a principal and an assistant principal. The assistant principal position is making about $10,000 more. And the difference here is this: when you hire an assistant principal, they generally are looking to become a principal. They can do that within 2 or 3 years. And so for $10,000, we changed the title from assistant principal to principal, gave more distribution of the responsibilities for those positions, but still have the same number of administrators in this building. And I don't know if that goes back 3 years to be true, but right. So
for this year, it is. Yeah. There are no increases in this proposed budget at all.
There's no administrative positions that are increased. It's a decrease.
So you said that the administrative position added to RES was sort of dealing with this, that there used to be 3 principals across the 3 elementary schools. And I can imagine difficulties that can arise from that. But I'm wondering if you could expand on that and fill us in on like, when we're talking about difficult decisions of what to cut, like how necessary is it to have an additional principal across the 3 elementary schools versus what we had before?
I mean, I think that you know, I'm trying to say this in the way that is as fair as it possibly can be, right? So part of the reason that we looked at and shared with you that there is a different way to look at things when we start moving campuses around. If we said, hey, we were going to cut a principal and we're going to have the principals be half-time in some buildings somewhere along the way, right? I would guarantee you that the behaviors that happen that need a principal will happen at the time that the principal's not there. It doesn't work. A part-time principal does not work. So
But 3
when
principals, 2 schools, I'm misunderstanding. I know it used to be shared, but 3 and 3, we're not talking about sharing.
Yeah, that was the model in 21, 22. Yeah, it was each principal was in a school.
And again, it wasn't one in one building. My understanding of the model at that time, although I wasn't here, my understanding of the model at that time was that 2 of the principals spent time in 3 buildings, right? So he spent some time here.
Were there
right?
requirements to have, is it because RES is bigger? Like, is that like a
Well, RES is more than 3 times bigger than either Braintree or Brookfield, right? So RES is significantly bigger than the other 2 elementaries.
We tried to do, I've been on the board for quite a long time. We did try to do for a time period, because of those small schools, we tried to have sort of coverage. And what ended up happening was we had a lot of pushback that each of those smaller schools wanted their own principal. And so that's fairly, I mean, and then when you think about workload and just what goes on in a school, and one has 3 times the number of students, then the one here is sort of overwhelmed, and the other 2, I mean, it's a hard conundrum given the enrollments that we have at the different schools.
Is there precedent for having 2 principals at a school this size? Does this happen in other places?
I think this happens in other places, yes.
I mean, I would say I've been in a lot of schools in other flavors and schools of about this size or bigger that only have 1 principal. And I hear that there are parity issues across the 3 schools. But it strikes me that there might be other ways to like support the person in administration at RES beyond just saying that it has to be equal. Other principals have to be in here as well, right?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not equal, even the 2 here, right? Because here's 3 times bigger with twice the amount of principal.
But I mean, there are schools all over of this size that have 1 principal and know with it, like assistant principal. I've been in a lot of them.
Yeah, but for me, where I am, Rachel, with that, so I'm 6 months in, looking at what's going on. What I've taken is the historical where we're at, and made the cut in administration. So when we look at the budgets that I'll be responsible for, we are cutting administration, right? Disproportionately from other positions. Could it go lower? I mean, I think that 10 years ago, when you looked at Title IX, there was no Title IX investigation. Just when these principals have to do a Title IX investigation, the amount of work that's associated with that alone, and the kind of things that can happen if you don't follow the Title IX process. Yeah, it's just not gonna, I don't think that that's the place to make the reduction. Right? If I thought that was the place to make the reduction, I could sit here and I would say that would be on the list. And clearly, I'm not afraid to cut administrative positions. Right? It's there. It's right there in the first round of cuts.
So can I just reframe sort of what I heard you say, Michael? So you know that I'm understanding it. So what I heard a lot of reflection talking about data going back to 20 to 25 years ago to the early aughts, you know, the early 2000s. So what I hear you saying in that comment is that there's been a significant increase in the administrative burdens at our schools.
Sure.
And so as a result of that increased burden, we have seen a rise or a need for increased administrative positions.
I suspect that's true here. Yes.
Yeah. So that's just what I hadn't heard it framed quite that comment that you said about Title IX. I also know in a previous meeting, we were talking about changes the state's made to our reporting of the registrar, and that there's been increased burdens with that. Our increased burden is maybe not the right word, but there's been more work associated with many of the things that we've had to do. And as a parent of 2 kids at RES, I can tell you the principals are really busy. And so I understand that they're administrative positions, but I also feel like they're front-facing positions. And I also know that there's a different, I don't know what the right word is, but there's definitely tenor to the student population at RES and some of the smaller schools. That's my thought. The second part is my thought as a parent. The first thought is me as a board member trying to understand.
I mean, when I look at this budget, and we look at the positions that were reduced in this budget, right? The nursing staff. So school quality standards say that one registered nurse for every 500 students. We have 5 full-time nurses right now for 800 students. Okay, that's why there's reduction. We're moving towards the school quality standards. The pre-K, the state awards us a portion of a full-time equivalency. So when we think about that weighting, Heather knows the number right off the top of her head.
0.46.
Yeah. 0.46 of the student. They don't. So we heard, and I believe, from a standpoint, the state says a pre-K student should have a weight of 0.4. I'm right there with our pre-K teachers who spoke today that said, can you imagine how much work it takes to get a pre-K kid into a snowsuit? Is 0.46 the right weight for pre-K? Probably not. Probably not. If instead of weighting the pre-K at 0.46, the pre-K was weighted at a 1 FTE, right? We'd be talking about, right, 60 kids, half an FTE more, a 30 student increase in our weighting. And a 30 student increase in our weighting would be very significant right at the moment. So this is part of the structure and part of the looking at the different pieces that are going on. I think that part of what we've got to do is structurally in Vermont, we've got to look at some things like that and say, hey, what's going on? I don't get to do that for all of Vermont today at the North Southwest meeting. I get to say, okay, if the board wants us to get under the excess cost threshold, then here's what I would do. And for every single person that's at this meeting, let's be really clear. We presented a level service budget to the board, and the board considered a level service budget to start with, because if I had my way, we wouldn't cut any of those positions. I'd be right there with every person who spoke today that said, don't cut, it's going to have a negative impact on kids. Yes. We said that right from the very beginning, that cutting would have a negative impact on kids. That's the conundrum. That's the place that, as a board, you are in the most challenging positions. And I hope that everybody who speaks and talks and thinks about this understands the balance that you all have to figure out as board members. You ultimately get to decide what's the budget going to be. But that's actually not true, though. You get to propose it, and then the taxpayers get to decide what it will, whether they approve that or not, right? And so that's what I think you're waiting and thinking about and talking about. And I'm really glad that there were more than 100 people participating in this today. That doesn't always happen, sharing, hey, what's going on. And I imagine that you spoke to people throughout the last month that had different thoughts and different ideas, and you could do this or you could do that. And I think that, understanding what those pieces are and what happens when you take this away, what happens over here to something else. That's the challenging piece that's going on.
Well, and I wonder, I did task the board with attempting to talk to as many people as they could and having the hard conversations kind of one-on-one. And I wonder if any members had conversations that they don't necessarily feel have been either represented at these meetings, or that, sometimes people are afraid to say things in a public meeting and they talk to us, and that's as Rachel pointed out, it's our job to represent them. So what kind of conversations did board members have?
I had several conversations with some older folks in our community, and these are folks who are on fixed incomes. They are very supportive of education. They really want to be able to support the schools. However, when I talked a little bit of detail about, I just sort of gave them that 20 cents per 100, or the 50 cent. When I said 50 and getting the penalty, they were like, no way. We won't go there. And even at the 20 cents, there was a little bit of angst about, but I explained kind of the rock and a hard place we're between. And again, we, in this group of people that I was with, we talked about, in my experience being on the school board, I haven't experienced having a budget get voted down, but the mood in Vermont, the mood in the nation is a little less giving, it seems to be. So, presenting a budget that's high is a little bit risky, and that's what folks were saying was, don't, be careful. And we talked about the number of newer, younger people sort of coming back into more rural areas because of COVID, and we want to hold on to that little bit of younger population. We also need to make sure our schools are performing and good places for kids to go. So
did you talk to these same people about what those cuts would look like?
I didn't. We talked a little bit about the pre-K, and then I had to get back to them because and maybe things had changed by then, because I ended up calling Michael to find out a little bit more about what exactly that means. So, yeah, I mean, these are older folks, so they have grandchildren in, and some of them have grandchildren in other places in Vermont, and their kids are dealing with the same things in terms of childcare slots, in terms of the cost, in terms of, funding everything. So, yeah, I mean, I think our community is very supportive of education and funding a budget. But I also feel like they are feeling a little bit of stress in terms of increases. So I think if we can be as conscientious as we can be without, really hitting the performance of our schools, I think that would go over well with the community, at least from my conversations with folks.
Sure. I had some mixed conversations. There's certainly a constituency of Brookfield that is full fund education, and weren't concerned about the cost. And I just had to take that with a grain of salt, considering the penalty, and that's just for some of those people who spoke to me, that's quite a point of privilege to be speaking from, when there's other parts of our district who merely aren't in that financial situation. So very mindful of that. Did speak to some other folks who were kind of more interested in a more drastic and transformative change to the district's landscape in order to achieve some of those savings. And then I talked to some folks who were just really frustrated that another increased cost but wasn't going to deliver increased services. So, those are kind of the three perspectives that I've heard. And yeah, I mean, this community has been really generous to budgets. This is a quandary that we're in with the change in weighted average. You had asked, like, why is there this major increase? And a big problem is it's really out of our hands in terms of how the funding model works in this state. I'm eager for some change, for transformation on the state level in terms of how we fund education. I think that's a major issue that the legislature didn't take on last biennium. I feel like and hope it will be a priority this biennium, but that doesn't change the situation that we're in for this year. So, and I don't like making decisions in a hasty format, like the idea of closing of the school in a 6-month period. I think that's too aggressive. Even though I may be in the camp where, okay, if that does drive significant savings and does make fiscal sense for this district, where we can provide students with better services across the district, across income brackets, if that's the business we're in the business of creating access to quality educations for all students in the district. So I have to keep that high in mind when, even though it may be unpopular to close a small town school, that's, I got to look at it from 30,000 feet. But again, I don't like making these decisions. And I think having a larger conversation about the landscape and the layout of our district is important. And I think it's one that's not going to go away. and costs are gonna continue to go up, and schools are gonna continue to be understaffed, and budgets are gonna continue to be strained, at least for the foreseeable future in this state. That's just the reality of the situation. So we're gonna have to start having some real conversations about these things. So that's kind of what I got from the Brookfield Coalition folks that I've talked to. You know, do appreciate Kyle's point during public comment that we haven't, I feel I haven't done enough outreach in my community, but that is in part due to the lack of tangible information about where we are with, like, what is our weighted average. I do want to have more of a conversation. I'm interested in, you know, not making any decisions. Of course, these guys can overrule me tonight. I would like to push to the special meeting so we can continue to gather more information, which it sounds like we're gonna have to pin down the actual number. But anyways, that's my ramble, and so we're in a hard spot.
Well, talking to my community, and I'm from Brookfield. First off, we need to clarify. I've heard it from a few folks tonight. Don't close any schools. There's nothing in this budget that closes a school, right? We're not voting on closing Brookfield. That being said, you know, if spending is not kept under control, that can be a future conversation. And so that segues into what I heard from my community. People told me really two extreme things. If taxes keep going up, I have to move. And then I think of folks like Callie Hastings, who last meeting said, if you ever close Brookfield, I would move. So there is an incredible, the top priority in my mind is, what can we do now to prevent a closure of our small school from happening? So that causes me to think about people like the gentleman who said, hey, it really can't be taxed anymore. So when we're looking at this particular budget, if I look at a median cost house in Vermont, in Orange County, this budget would cause that $200,000 house, a median cost. This budget would cause that property tax to go up by $460 a year, or $38 a month. If we went with the other camp of just tax me harder, just do it, which I heard. Someone said, tax me harder, just whatever you need, baby, let's go. Full throttle. You know, that causes the median house property tax to go up $780 a year, or $65 a month. My community continuously told me, go for it. But it feels incredibly irresponsible to burden anyone in my community with a $65 a month increase this year. What's to say this is going to happen next year, right? At the forefront of my community's mind is keeping Brookfield open. Again, that's not in this budget. But I do think it's prudent to save now. Additionally, no preschool cuts, which I'm not seeing in this budget. The existing preschools are not going away in this budget. They're staying open. One classroom is going away and being consolidated into other classrooms in the same building. Okay.
Not necessarily in the same building.
Oh, right. But as it stands, we have 14 students in Randolph room and 15 students in another room.
Yeah.
The existing students are accounted for.
Yeah.
No.
So what would happen? 20 per classroom. So
we have
over.
Okay. So those over students go to Brookfield Elementary. Okay. So those are the big things I hear in my community. Don't cut preschool. don't ever think about closing Brookfield. And we saw warnings from this from Lane, the previous superintendent. Was one of his letters specifically called out, not allowing ourselves to be overcome with nostalgia for these things, and that we'd have to have some hard conversations in the future. So I feel like the work that this administration has done is getting ahead of those hard conversations. We created 10 budgets. It's amazing. So that's what I'm hearing from you. It's their big priority is keep Brookfield open in the future. So what can we do now? And it strikes me that great savings now allows that to happen in the future, or makes it a little. That's all.
I'll just stop you there just to make other people, if there were conversations you had, we just heard from two Brookfield representatives. I'm not going to go down the line. I'm not going to force anybody this week. But I do want to, it's so hard. I want as many voices represented as possible. I also know at some point we gotta do the hard things, right? And that doesn't mean to stop listening. But it does no way to make there's no way to make this painless. There's no way to make this painless, and there's no way to make it feel good, because cuts are going to happen. I think no vote is being taken. I think double taxing is pretty much off the table. That's a guess, because we're not voting and I'm not taking a straw vote or, asking for yays and nays. But I feel pretty confident saying that. So that means that something's going to hurt. So I spoke to a bunch of different people, and I'll be pretty brief, and it was a wide range. There were plenty of people that said we have the ability to pay more taxes. And like Sam said, we recognize that we're in a privileged point to say that, and there are many people in our community that are not in that same financial position. So I heard sort of that, and down to, it's becoming very difficult to afford to live in Vermont in general. So not necessarily specifically about school budget increases, but just sort of overall, the cost of living here is getting more difficult. So I heard a range of like, go for it, to like, ooh, it's getting really tight financially. And a lot of recognition that we live in a pretty fiscally diverse community.
Basically, everyone who has spoke already has touched on something that I would have said with the group of folks that I have talked to. So I'm going to leave it open to the Braintree reps to give their chance to say any feedback. Go ahead.
I feel like what I've heard has been well vetted.
Sure. I mean, so I've heard some, we need to support our schools because this is our future, right? And that our schools need the funding. And I also heard more general frustration that was not necessarily under our purview about the way that tax dollars are going to things that people don't necessarily want, and they might want them to go towards schools, and frustration with the way the schools are funded, which, makes me wonder about advocacy beyond our school district. I mean, I sort of perused the minutes in some of the state conversations around like, what are people trying to figure out there? And there are proposals that people are floating around about like changing to income tax away from property tax. And like, I don't know enough about school finance to know how that would work, but something has to change. And that's not necessarily something that we can make any decisions based on tonight, but it was what I was hearing.
Thank you. Any more information that we get, and we need more, I understand that.
May I ask for a quick section of the board? What information is it that you think you need? And I'm okay with waiting to make a decision. That will prompt me to put some advocacy out there to the people that can get that information.
Well, let me bounce it back to you. Would any new information really actually change the budget? Like, I mean, we understand that we're at, we understand that we need to slip under this excessive cost threshold. But is it going to really be significant if you get a different number? I mean, the different number is not going to be that different.
Right, it's not.
No. So you have made your best, and it's reasonable, and it's not going to change that much. It's not going to be like, oh, don't worry, guys. If it turns out we don't actually move it $1 million, like to slip under that threshold, it's not going to be $500,000.
I made the prediction for you last time of where the tax rates would be. If you go back and watch the tape, I didn't do that. You did. If we didn't get the 200s, where it would be, and if we did get the 200, or what we do if we got under that 200. So we're talking a very small number in the equalized people that could be a little bit off of where we're at. The teams did a really good job. And we could pick up a couple to 5 kids on the AD. If I were betting, the equalized count would go up slightly. If I were betting 2 kids. Right, and that's going to have practically no impact on the excess spending.
What do you believe?
So are you looking for us to go ahead and,
No, I'm not pushing you to do anything at all, Ann. I am simply saying if what I'm hearing from the board. So what I really believe is that my job is to listen to what the board says and then try to deliver on what the board's looking for. Hence the different view of the pre-K and coming and having the pre-K in a different light, right? So at the moment, as I sit here, I'm not hearing what more you need to make the decision. And yet it's your decision, and I'm not going to push the timeline on it. I'm going to tell you that the 15th, you're pretty much at the end of the runway, right? So you're not going to have the ability to say, hey, on the 15th, we don't want to make the decision. I think what'll happen. So if there's something that you think you need, I want to go and get it. If, like Brian led that pretty perfectly for me, is if you're sitting here thinking the ADM is going to change, the long-term weighted average daily membership is going to change in a way that's going to have a significant impact, I can tell you tonight it's not. Right? We are just about where we are with what our cost per equalized people is going to be. The only thing that would cause a different decision than tonight would be if that long-term weighted average daily membership went down slightly, you would need to warn a different number so that we got back underneath the excess cost threshold. And we would do that with the line item up to the back.
So is the decision we're making, or potentially making right now, a decision between accepting the level service versus the 1.1 million in cuts? Like those are the
right. The 10.5 increase or the 6.5 increase.
And I personally don't think I can, in good conscience, go to our community as willing as some people are. I don't want to make any cuts, and I don't think 10.5% increase for our community is reasonable to ask. So double tax of those that other.
So sorry. Go ahead. I wonder if for folks there is something other than the enormously valid and important discomfort of sitting here thinking about the specific things that will be cut. Is there something else that would stop a board member from being able to pass or approve a budget at a certain level?
And there's a sense. Yep. So I appreciate that part of the conversation. There is the piece of me that says ultimately, what you do lets us, if you approve the number, it would let us be at the spot where we were getting the information to the town clerks, the state, all the places that we needed to be about what our spending is going to be. We will not be able to approve a warning tonight because we don't have that exact long-term weighted average daily membership number. So you're going to have to approve a warning at a different point anyway in a week. Right, so that's going to be there. So I'm not telling you that you have to make the decision tonight. I'm just wanting to know if there's information that you need to make the decision. Right. I do need to give you one more piece of information. So the law changed as far as what the language of the warning has to be. Okay, and when you look in the packet that you got tonight, that language is reflected there. And I should have had that page on this so that I can still see it. All right, I'm going to read it to you. That's what it would be right now. And I plugged in the number with the current long-term weighted average daily membership and assuming that you want it to be under the excess spending threshold, right? So it doesn't have to be that, but it's Article 10 on the warning. And it reads so that everybody can hear it. Shall the voters of the Orange Southwest School District approve the school board to expend $27,144,943, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The Orange Southwest School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $15,926, which is a 23.96% higher per pupil education spending for the current year.
That sounds terrible.
So that's what gets you under the excess spending threshold, but that's what your balance is going to be. Yeah.
What's the percent if we're not under the threshold? If we level service, do you know what the percent?
Oh,
what percent
should
shows up?
like huge.
Could we can get that for you. Robin can get that for you very quickly.
I just want to be like, that sounds terrible.
Voters are gonna block it.
It's not real, it's based on the weighted average. That's,
I know,
no,
but
it's terrible. It really is.
No,
Because
Nobody's gonna prove that, right?
voters are gonna look at this like, wait, that's a lower option. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
yes.
There wasn't something like that on last year's warning, no?
No, watch.
No, because last year they had suspended the required language. And so all you had to have like last year was what you wanted to expend. So if we could have used last year's language, it would have been, we can expend $27,144,943, question mark.
Wow.
So it feels important to communicate to the public that we have a reduction in our weighted daily average.
Yes.
It would be very important to say that.
We
And
had,
that is-
as a result of over-reporting of Medicaid, right? Because it's not a change. It is not, when Heather says this isn't real, well, it's real in the sense that this is what's changing in our cost per long-term weighted average daily membership. The reason behind it isn't real. It was too many kids were identified as being in poverty in the current year's budget. Kids that were identified as being in poverty weren't really in poverty. according to the state's weighting formula, which Sam, we're here to hear that. But, that was it. So I think that's an important, sorry, that's an
No,
important,
so
that's
we
an
actually got a
important
financial
piece.
benefit this year that we shouldn't be getting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm. So 36.34% at the level.
And this, while it looks awful, I mean, that quote you just said, Rachel, this looks terrible and includes a lot of cuts.
It looks terrible and it's painful. All.
Yeah, this is gonna be a really interesting town meeting there.
Well, the who watches Australian ballot?
No, that's right. Oh, it's still gonna be interesting. See how it goes.
Is there anybody who wants to go for the
36
10%?
staff.
Level 6? I mean,
No.
I know everybody wants it, but
As a
practically.
voter,
Yeah.
as a,
No, as a board member. As a human, yeah.
So.
Right.
Will somebody point to Article 10 for Sam so he can see what he missed?
yeah, what was the number?
So,
Required.
So now it's required.
No, I got all that, but what if the percentage?
Well, yeah,
36. if you have a level, sorry, 36, I see, I did, yes, pretty good, huh? Yeah.
just a point of, logistics order, how does this work? Do we move to accept one of these two budgets?
Anyone is welcome to make a motion for both.
We don't do it now, we do it next week.
So I want to ask one more time, is there anything that people feel they need before considering this vote?
One scenario is for you to push the 10 and see what the voters do. See if they kick it back.
What happens if they kick it back?
We get to do this all over again. But so what?
I'm just putting a hypothetical.
Of course, that is absolutely one road we could go down.
And then we would have this other budget ready as the next point to go down. Like, you don't have to go through this again, but it wouldn't be like starting from scratch. That is true. Just to put that out there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And when the community members come to us and say, I just can't do this.
The only problem with that scenario is it's the people who are most financially strained carry that's burden. It's
And we're paying money for something that we're not even getting, right? We're just paying fines.
Right.
Which just feels wildly irresponsible.
Because
Yeah. I really just understand.
making a motion. The motion would be something like to authorize a budget of take it all amount. Or which we can't do.
Well, we've got the number.
We got the most chart.
Oh, it's just, it's gonna get one with it. Shit.
We'll have to meet again to finalize the project.
All right.
You can approve a budget tonight, you can't approve a warning tonight.
Okay.
Budget we approved is the number.
Budget you approve is the number.
It's not the percent increase.
That's just the top line.
I will rip the Band-Aid off. I move to accept the budget of 27 million, approve the budget of $27,144,943, also known as the extra spending threshold budget.
Do you want to say?
I say further discussion.
All those in favor audibly, visibly say aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Rachel seconded. Thank you.
Gate is not finished.
Gate is not finished. Yes. And could you take us to the next item while I run to your restroom? Sure. Thank you so much. Report of the different subcommittees. So we were looking at that new ends. I was encouraging us to hold off on actually approving it until we do the board accelerator training on end executive limitation, which is the next module, which is the next month. So just to make sure so that we can learn about ends and how you write ends policies and then check it out. Make sure it lines up.
So this is just a sort of second read without
Approving, yeah, but yeah, so it's just that, and I'm sure people probably didn't have a whole lot of time to be thinking about that, budgets. And then we already did the ownership linkage because that was the annual meeting stuff. So, negotiations, scheduled meeting.
We do have a
We
schedule.
do have a scheduled meeting,
Yes.
which is, it's in my calendar.
First, I think.
The 23rd,
27th.
and we're doing both the support staff and teachers together, right?
Getting the ground rules and the schedule together, yeah.
Right. Is that an executive session meeting, just so that if public is watching, they know if they can hear any of that? Well,
You
that
know, Ann, I got a note from Pietro that said it's not a meeting,
oh, it's not a meeting.
so I don't have to warn it.
Oh, okay.
Pietro, I need to get back to it this week and say, okay, are you sure? Right?
Yeah.
So, but that was the
That was
initial.
his. that was-
Yep.
Nice. Okay. Will that be online? Or is it gonna be, it's gonna be in person, right?
I think it's gonna be in person, but I imagine that people are gonna want to have.
Some people might want to do it online.
I think that's, what time is that meeting?
5.
5. Thank you.
Would that be at the central office?
It's gonna be at the media center at the high school because of the number of people.
At the media
Is that called?
Okay, so we're on, monitoring the organization. Oh, no, we're on board
We're on
education, sorry.
education. I'm gonna flat out admit I did not do this module yet.
So Benjamin?
Benjamin, please, if we could, and I apologize for that.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
I was wondering if when we think about board education going forward, we would maybe want to think about not doing it during budget season.
That's a nice thought. Because apparently I'm already on that train.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to be doing this right now, and I did it anyway.
Well, you know, I think there's an argument to be made both ways, because all of it is board work, right? And, you know, there's a lot of board work right now. There's a lot of board work right now.
Yeah, well, there were quieter months this year.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe we'll double module it. Yeah. But thank you. Okay, so moving on, the executive limitation 2.6, you will notice that there is not a first read of an executive limitation for that very same reason.
And I appreciate
that going.
that you allow that flexibility. It did allow me to take some time and figure out on the 2.6. You'll remember last meeting, Ann said that 15,000 had become 40,000. And I said I couldn't find the policy where you guys changed it. So that's why I didn't change it in here. And then I went to talk a little with Robin, and Robin says, oh, Michael, go pull out your law book. It was, you can say it this way, but go look at your law book, Title 16, Section 559. And it changed its statute. It's interesting. Our auditors in Grand Isle required us to adopt the board to adopt a policy in order to follow the law, which I think is funny. But so that's why I was looking for the policy. But so I went ahead and made those changes. I made some other slight changes in here as well.
So I did, because that was one of the things I was supposed to do. I did check, and the board meeting on March 16th, 2023, we also changed it in policy. We did a motion, we passed the motion. So it's in the meeting notes for that meeting.
From March 15th.
From March 16th of 2023, we changed that amount in the policy. We just never got updated.
Never got changed there. Okay.
Thanks for finding that. Yeah, that's impressive.
Well, with that, I'll feel comfortable changing it in the actual document that we
Yes.
have, so that.
And get it online. Our policies are online. I don't, who does that?
Yes,
do we have to tell, or do we, yeah, I don't know what the process is. If we change something in a policy, I guess we could have Kyle do it, because she clerks for us, sort of.
Well, I think what would happen in this case is, so you changed one of your executive limitations, right? By making that change. And so in that meeting, ideally what would have happened would have been, they made a change to the executive limitations and uploaded it up onto the website in the spot where you have your executive limitations. Because it's there, they're out there.
I think what we're saying is, who does that? Like who?
Right, like who does it, so that it gets done.
Kyle manages the connecting with the people who put it up there.
Okay.
Right? So that's the piece of it. The superintendent, actually. So thinking about last month's, you're asking who's responsible. And that's a variety of different people, but who's accountable? That's the superintendent. Okay. So.
But there are policies that are on the web. So do we as a board have to make a motion to say to you to go to the website and fix it? Or you'll just fix it because we made a motion back
You
on
made
March
that the
16th,
problem.
2023.
Right, so that was for me, that's what the challenge was. That's why I didn't change it when I gave it to you, even though I knew there had been a change in the state. If I had changed it, then I would be changing something that was board policy.
Okay.
And so by leaving it there, the conversation that we had around it has been perfect, right? Because you were able to find it. I was able to find that it changed in statute. And now I can go in there, I can look exactly at what you motioned on the whatever I wrote it.
March 16th.
March 16th, 23. I can see exactly what it says and work with Kyle to make sure that it says what it needs to say on the website.
Perfect. So unless anybody has any questions, I will entertain a motion to approve executive limitation 2.6.
Well, there were a couple of typos.
Let's see if I caught them.
I looked, I compared it, so I was checking to make sure you changed the amount.
Yep.
And then, observable conditions, letter B, access to substantial amounts, isn't that like the one if you're missing the twos? Personnel with access to substantial amounts, right?
With access to, yeah, probably that should have it work too. There you go.
And then, letter E in that same section, is in a place and, you put and. Sorry, I was just reading through and I was like, oh, geez. I do the same thing. And then I thought J should say buildings instead of building, because there's more than one in the district. So I just made that plural.
Sure.
And then I had a question for you. In your new one, you removed in your evidence, I think that's the name of the title. Yeah, your evidence and your observable conditions. G, you took out the piece that we wouldn't find documentation of procurement procedures, comparative bids, for purchase orders over board. So I was like, why did he decide to take those out in this one? I'm curious.
I think, so that was out of, I think that's the one that it was misplaced in there and it was already covered in the place that it should have been covered, right? That was.
Which is in,
So it was originally, help me remember where it originally was, yeah. Was it originally?
well, you had it in G.
Yep.
In this first one that you gave us, and then
And it was about bids, right?
yeah, but it was also about financial reports and audits.
Yep. So that's why I moved it with a little bit of help from GD. I just left it in the,
But I didn't see it in the new one. Where did you put it in the new one? Did you put it somewhere else?
so just with the business manager can provide the list of the, right? Am I in the right spot under the evidence?
Oh, is that what you did with it? Was that, oh, in the bid process here. Let me see what mine, the old one said.
So I thought.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, so that's covering that. Okay, that's why you did.
Yep.
Got it. Makes sense. And then I wondered why you didn't add your public image and reputation protection budget information meeting and the annual report. It's kind of your front facing, some of your front facing stuff that can really go well and to.
Because I didn't think about asking, right?
Oh,
There's a
Well,
billion things.
I think those would be great to have, but you don't have to put them in if you don't want to, but I think I will be watching you.
So now I'd love to entertain a motion to approve with
One
the
more
typos.
typo, okay.
But would that stop you from approving it?
No,
The typo
no.
not made? So then I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll show you that.
So moved.
At the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Moved by Sarah, seconded by Ryan. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. It has been approved. Thank you for your work on that, Michael.
You are.
I know you have nothing else going on. Employee harassment or harassment, how you pronounce it, second read, any comments? Great, then I'll entertain another motion. So moved. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Neil, for the second. All those in favor, audibly, visibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, passes unanimously. I would like to move that this also is tabled. This next one, 4.6. Now, it is a quickie, so if we want to go with it, it's subcommittees.
Good job. I mean, we certainly use them. Does anyone?
I think we should just remove that one piece, that one number 5.
Tell me.
Committees will be used sparingly and ordinarily in an ad hoc capacity. Why is that there?
Because
We do have standing committees. It's appropriate to have standing committees.
not with policy governance. Because you don't want your board to get split. Where a committee is taking on too much of the actual.
There's an evaluation in March. Oh, right, they're reconfigured
Yes, that's every, right, so they are in a way, but we may want to change it up, we might want to change the charge. And just with policy governance in general, you want to make sure that the whole board is engaged in the thinking that's going on, that it doesn't get, siloed into a committee that's doing all of it and the rest of the board isn't necessarily up to speed.
It's sort of naturally built in with this board because it's a small board and because there's turnover. We're not a corporate board where people sit on the board for 10, 20 years. We turn over because people are elected every 3 years.
Right.
It's kind of built in, I think they're reconfigured, I think. That's the only thing I was saying about that.
Well, Rachel, you said it before when we thought of this policy, and I think that this is the reason we do these, right?
Just keep talking about it each year as we go through this. We talk about it.
Just leave it.
Why that doesn't apply to us.
And when you're in year 20, you'll know why.
Shall we make a
Moving on.
committee to consider?
No, please don't.
Okay. Thank you. Consent agenda. I'm gonna go in order. Does anyone have anything to edit from the board meeting minutes?
No, but wow, Kyle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Believe it's all.
And manually, I might add, that's a pen in her hand, not a laptop. Subcommittee meeting minutes, which I don't think there were any in here. I know why I'm saying they did. Okay, RTCC budget. Any comments? Anything to talk about?
Ready to approve it the way that it is.
Okay. The financial management questionnaire, which I just think is so funny, and I try to understand it every time, but someone else said it for us and it's lovely. So does anyone have any questions?
Do we have any wrong answers on there? Are we doing it wrong? That's not what I had.
And so I looked with the word finance. I trust her with.
Is there anything we need to fix about, like, did we answer wrong in any of these questions?
In the questionnaire,
Yes. Is there anything we need to fix?
Questions that your employees within their, normal income.
Yes.
I did, I asked Robin about that and she gave me 2 examples. And it was great. So,
we watch that. Should we have pre-numbered checks? Is that to make sure people aren't writing checks secretly?
well, they're pre-numbered by the system. So all our check stock's blank to have a safer event.
Okay.
Can we get to the 48-hour receipt deposit, please?
48 hours, I'll ask the bills. How the school is.
Yes.
So we're doing okay.
We are.
Okay, then carry on.
Sister students have some information as to who does what.
Okay. Announced tuition range.
so we didn't end up needing to do it in a range because as soon as you accept the budgets, right? Yeah, so here you go. Your announced elementary tuition rate would be $21,072. Your announced high school rate, $27,412. Wow. The RTCC rate, $23,490. That's rated, sorry.
No, that's RTC.
Sorry, okay, RTCC $23,490 and rated on this page, $30,524. Is what you approved if you approved it in July.
I'll entertain a motion for the whole enchilada.
I need to approve the consent agenda as outlined in the agenda.
I'll second that.
That was seconded by Rachel Fish. Further discussion? All those in favor audibly visibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. So I'm gonna jump in here and read into the record my addition to the agenda.
Yeah.
Is that cool before your, report? This is a response from the chair of the board of Cane Mountain, which is Williamstown, right?
Northfield,
Northfield, Williamstown, thank you. So as you recall, letters were sent to surrounding districts, taking the temperature, maybe you want to even have a conversation about regional schools. She wrote, Van Deeren, Jessica Van Deeren, good afternoon. Thank you for your recent letter. Our board had the opportunity to discuss the possibility of a shared school at our December meeting. We believe that an exploratory conversation would be worthwhile. Please let me know how you would like to proceed. So I let her know we were meeting this evening, and we talk about whether we might schedule something. In my humble opinion, that should be scheduled not this month nor next. Or not this one. That's my.
So like after.
Yeah, what is that like?
March.
So I have responded back and said, hey, we'll let you know, but, so it's not. But have a meeting about how we have the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's what you would decide between now and then a little bit. And it would be some, either both boards in a joint board meeting, or subcommittees of both boards. It could sort of be, what would you look at doing? How would you go about starting this conversation? If you continue to be interested in this, what this allows me to do is on Friday, in a meeting with the superintendent of the Central Vermont Supervisory Union, which Maine Mountain is part of, and it lets him and me say, okay, we've got both our boards saying they're interested in doing this. What do we need to do to help that process kind of come back? And it lets us have that conversation to help you for your next meeting.
Well, and what Mike means by both boards are interested in doing this, that this is having the conversation, not making them.
It's really having a conversation about how to have a conversation.
Right, yeah, right.
Right, which sounds complicated, but I think what it does for the people who are still on the call and in the room, is it says, hey, remember community, was it 2 months ago, or was it last month's meeting? Whatever meeting. We said we would craft a letter, and we crafted a letter and sent it about potentially working together on building a new high school. And the response from half of the people that we sent the letter to is, yes, we'd like to have a conversation about having a conversation. I set that up.
Did we get any response from the other districts?
Not yet, but I also see that superintendent on Friday.
Can we create a sub, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I tend to agree with Anna on pushing it out a little bit, especially from a legislative policy agenda perspective for the biennium. I think just a game of football. If you want to do something.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
If you want to do a something.
I didn't know we do something. It's not ad hoc. It's definitely not ad hoc.
Here's the thing about the subcommittee. I'm just interested to know if there's anyone here who absolutely would not want to be on that subcommittee. I mean, isn't everyone interested in hearing how the conversation
Maybe you
goes?
have the conversation about having a conversation with you and Michael, and that's sort of a subcommittee.
So what I'm hearing from this meeting is, I would say to Matt on Friday, that board is excited to have everybody at that meeting. So from our side of this conversation, we think that this might be a meeting between the two boards.
It could be unwieldy if the first conversation is between two boards. Yeah, I mean, my only hesitation there is that it makes it a very big event. I don't mean numbers, but I mean like it's momentous. To like.
You know, we go to open pantry, we get legal grinders.
So you don't have to do it in anybody's town. You can do it at a neutral site if you want.
Oh, we're gonna go to Ashley now.
You know, that's,
So I mean, that was a weird way to ask it, I guess, saying, who doesn't want to be a part of this conversation? But it is just the conversation about the conversation. I mean, it's not. So I disagree with my 5 minute ago former self, and that is subcommittee is the way to go. I know.
The first to consent. It's like you and Michael agree with this.
And then we're here, or do I delegate and say, okay, what are the ground rules for having this conversation? What are the gauge their interest?
might you be able to.
And then bring the boards together.
So we need to, as a board, make a motion to say, Hannah, you sit down with Michael and connect with Green Mountain and their superintendent and talk about how we could run a meeting that involves both boards.
Maybe they want to sit at the.
Wow, did you hear that motion, Hannah?
Considering.
I heard her say I made a motion.
I set an agenda. Yeah, figure out what are the.
So I move that we have Hannah and Michael sit down with the superintendent from Green Mountain in their chair and figure out a way for the two boards to have a conversation. They can organize how we're gonna do it.
Second.
Seconded by Sam. All those in favor? Visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed? 7. Great. The further discussion would be like, can we just kind of come up with, as the boards come together, talking points or things that need to sort out. That would be the issue. Discussion of it. The question already passed. So. There it is. You're not allowed to add tasks
Beautiful, Rachel, we're gonna sign a food committee as part of you.
I was actually thinking that, it's like if the boards get together, it should be like, we should host food from the tech center.
Yeah.
And like have the tech center prepare food and be like. Yeah, that wouldn't be momentous at all. Are you being sarcastic? Yes, I am. Well, that's what I mean. You guys are sorting this out.
And then we'll have a momentous meeting.
Then we'll have a moment. Like, I think if we actually do bring the boards together, that is momentous. That's something that a lot of people are interested in.
I think it's a big deal.
A lot of communities. Yeah.
When we did this, we had the first conversation when I worked with the Northeast Kingdom and we were working on the merger that eventually eliminated my administrative job. Right? It got picked up in the Caledonia Record, talking about creating a mega district in the Northeast Kingdom, right? It was great.
It's a funny word to apply to the Northeast Kingdom.
Yes, but we were talking, what we pulled together with the chair that I worked with at Essex Caledonia and I pulled together at that point was, what if we took every K to 8 that tuitioned and we created one district? Because that's what most of the districts in the Northeast Kingdom were. So it kind of was. And it didn't end up being that, but it ended up being a really great conversation and it ended up with something that really did make a difference.
Be curious to see what happens to the individual school boards in that kind of scenario, but that's a different conversation for another time.
It's fascinating.
To us.
Yeah.
So some of the school boards across the state are really big. Like I'm on one, it's 18 people.
Wow. Yeah, I think somebody I know is on.
Because nobody wants to give up a rep, and they put towns together and then.
Because I remember, I read a lot about Act 42 recently, about like 10 years ago.
36.
Consolidated school boards and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Interesting.
That is the reason that Roxbury goes to Montpelier. It passes through. Okay. All right, superintendent's report, do you?
I think the only thing I wrote in my superintendent's report had to do with budgets.
Yep.
If you want to talk more about that.
Okay, newsletters, principals reports, action item recap. Well, we're gonna meet. Boy, take a lot of notes.
You're gonna talk to Ben Merrill.
Yes, I'm gonna meet with Ben Merrill after receiving an email from Sam.
Yeah,
Tomorrow morning.
Sam.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, they were.
We're gonna make that. I wanna just take a minute and thank everyone, all of you for doing what? Oh, you said so, what? Tell me.
No, I carry on. No, she didn't say anything at all. Carry on.
Braintree side.
Yell at a nice Rachel.
I'd like to thank everyone but the Braintree representatives. This is really hard what we're doing. This is hard for everyone there and I think that we have tried our hardest to be thoughtful and respectful in doing what is probably the worst part of our job. So thank you all for your work, and Rob and Michael, Kyle, Heather, thank you. This sounds like I'm giving like a I just wanted to acknowledge it's a long meeting and it's hard. And here we are. We need to meet next week. So yes, and Rachel Fish.
I did have, I don't know, when, is there like an official time where you do other business, like other?
Yes.
Like, is it?
Nope, it's
Okay.
right now.
You say butter business?
Other business.
Over this now. Yes.
Okay,
other
so
business,
one
please.
is, I heard from a community member, what I thought was a really good idea, that when we were worried about people not knowing and not coming to meetings, that people, I think we talked about it before, that like, a lot of people aren't looking at the Herald. And that there was a suggestion to get the warning on Front Porch Forum. And that maybe we could ask Kyle to post the no, we can't post it on our behalf, or.
Kyle won't be able to have access potentially, I don't think, to all of the towns for the Porch Forums.
No, that's one of the, which I really am not.
But each of you.
Public
could post it.
information.
Well, I have an account on Front Porch Forum with my board email address. And I can post a link to the agenda. And there are separate ones. I thought that they all.
Brookfield and Braintree receive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. Because you can check a box that says, do you want this to go to neighboring towns?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do that if we think that will reach, if you want to.
I think it's worth a try.
So my nudge will be when you send us the packet. Because once you send the packet, it's up on the website.
It goes up Monday.
Got it. Okay, so I just need to put in a reminder that, okay.
And then I have one other very small thing. Can we put page numbers in here? Because I'm constantly lost.
Yes. I would love
I have.
The only issue I see there is that they're all separate PDFs, but as long as you have, they're coming from all, like I sent her a couple documents, Rob sent stuff.
Well, even if like each PDF had like a letter or something that we could.
Or like if we get the packets, we just number them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can say, hey, I'm received 5.
not about it. That's not a bad idea.
We can do it.
By hand, by hand.
There's gotta be some technology that makes this easier.
Hey, we just made budget cuts. We owe it to the voters.
I agree.
I think we need a subcommittee. That's a great idea. And
Those are all like, I'm sure we can figure it
Do
out.
we have a time and location for the special meeting?
we do not. I wonder if we need a location for the special meeting or if it
Can
is.
we do it online?
That would be great. Remind me the purpose of that, now that we-
I do have to have a physical location, but you don't have to be at it. So if I have to choose the physical location, right, I'm gonna assume that there's still gonna be lots of people who want to come to it. So I would say let's do it. I think there will be people that show up, maybe, yeah, but I think voting on a budget, you may have cut down some of the people that'll come. It's gonna be a short meeting.
But can you see if the media center is available?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if the high school is available, and I would be at the high school so that nobody else has to be.
At 6 o'clock or 5?
At whatever time you guys decide right now.
We're talking about 15.
What day was that? Wednesday.
I'm gonna say 6 because that's what I'm used to, but people can.
That'll work. That'll work.
Easy to remember. Easy time, 6 o'clock, 15th media center, unless you find that it's not available, in which case we'll.
And there'll be an online link, right?
And for huge, yep. I'll try to keep it to what. Okay, oh, for next week?
But let's put it on front porch. We can practice putting on front porch for.
We can, is the agenda
It
simply?
doesn't have to go in there because it's a special meeting. The board doesn't have to go out except for 24 hours ahead of time. If it doesn't make that, it's okay. It does not have to go.
Right, this might not be the one to track it.
We want feedback. This will be important, but. this-
Yeah. Okay. Okay, other items, and if not, anyone have a need for an executive session? If you have a need, you gotta make policy, so, okay. Good, then I shall call this meeting adjourned.